when there's no more room in hell.
The dead will start a podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to No More Room in Hell 62, Take 2. Why do I say Take 2? Because Skype decided that I wanted to cut off our original recording 5 minutes into it. So if we breeze through some of the stuff that we technically already talked about, you'll understand why. But before we get into any of that, again, I'll introduce my cast again. I'm Mike, always with me. It's a Venom, or Mr. Venom. How's it going?
Greetings and salutations, British anthology fans. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Maybe a little pissed off that I'm feeling deja vu right now, but otherwise, not too bad. How you been?
Has your mood changed in the last hour at all? Because, I'm doing okay. Just all sorts of dumb things going on in my life. No, I don't even want to repeat all the stuff I said originally, but let's say that I'm coming to the end of ordeals that will make my life routine more routine again, and that will be good. We're managing to still get fresh cuts recorded on a regular basis. It's more affected the recording of this show and probably just any side stuff I do. But light at the end of the tunnel. New floor should be in probably, I guess, in the next couple of weeks. And then we can probably try to start recording this more regularly, which is what always our intention is. But between the three of us, things come up sometimes. But also with us is Derek. What's up, Derek?
The one thing I wanted to mention last time before we recorded, and then we forgot to record, is during Venom's first review of Bad Fish, that the only red herons that I like are Jerry Heron. That's all I'm going to say.
That's valid.
It was worth it just for that. I think the first time I asked, none of us have been up to too much new things. I mean, it's been a long while. The last episode we recorded was the one with Lacey as the guest. That's back towards the beginning of summer, and we are now, I guess technically we're in fall, just depending on where you live. It still feels like summer here, but we're about to click over to October. Spooky season is in full effect. Yeah. People keep putting together their 31s for 31s for the people who do that. Seasonal stuff hitting big time, but other than that, it's been a lot of the same. I mean, as a parent, my life doesn't really change. I have a routine I stick to just because I don't have time for anything else these days. But this is a little bit more of an abbreviated intro just because we don't want to repeat everything. So we will get kind of right into our What We Watched segment. Venom, I know you had such a joy discussing these first two things the first time around, so why not do it again? What do you have up first?
All right. Well, this first movie I'm going to talk about is one that was a potential Fresh Cuts candidate a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of September. The reason I was interested in it is because the last couple of mermaid horror films that have been released over the last 5, 6, or 7 years have actually been pretty good. Stuff like The Lure really sticks out in my memory as being a really high quality, mermaid horror film. So when I saw that a new one was coming out, and that it was coming to us, from the UK with mostly English and Irish actors, I thought this could be kind of interesting. But unfortunately, it turned out to not be nearly as good as some of the previous mermaid horror films that have been released. So this movie that I'm talking about right now is called Bad Fish. Like I said, this one's coming to us from the UK. It is written and directed by Brad Douglas. It is the story of a marine biologist who visits a coastal town after some mysterious attacks start to occur on some of the local fishermen. Some bodies start to come up from the water, body parts, things like that. As it turns out, there is a legend of a mermaid that, or a group of mermaids maybe, that lives, that maybe doesn't live in this area, but kind of they come back like every few years to this area. You know, they migrate basically. So this movie is the story of that, of, you know, it's one particular mermaid in general that we're following. It's not too much of a spoiler to say that, you know, her identity is revealed fairly early in the film, probably like around the beginning of the second act. And then the rest of the film is just kind of a cat and mouse, you know, will she get what she wants? Basically, she has to marry someone before the end of the summer, or she has to return to the sea. But if she marries someone, she can stay as a human. It's very much Disney's Little Mermaid when you kind of think about it. But just honestly, I'd probably rather watch Disney's Little Mermaid than this one over again. Jesus. Yeah, this one, no flounder, no Ursula, nothing remotely interesting in Bad Fish. So yeah, unfortunately, it's a fairly dull movie, not much of a body count. We only really get one decent scene of gore, and it's not really even a kill scene so much as just like a random attack, since the victim doesn't actually pass away. But there's just not really much I can say about this one. It's not really, despite it being a coastal town, the cinematography is just okay. The performances are not great. The writing is fairly atrocious. And the effects are probably the worst part of the film. I mean, once we actually get the full reveal of our mermaid, she looks more like a giant snake. She looks like something out of Lair of the White Worm more than an actual mermaid, honestly. So, yeah.
Hey, well, now you're selling it to me. Tell me more.
Oh, no, hey, I like Lair of the White Worm, but I'm just comparing it to the snake in that movie, the way that our supposed mermaid looks in this movie.
Night of the Demons 2.
Oh, God, I'd rather watch that any day of the week. But anyway,
another movie. It's not a mermaid movie really, but it's a good use of a mermaid / siren was Lighthouse.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
Are you sure? I thought it was about two guys wanting to bang each other.
Oh, yeah, the mermaid isn't a major. I mean, the mermaid is more a metaphor in The Lighthouse. You know, I mean, even though we do physically see a mermaid we even get to see her vagina, it's still, she's definitely more of a metaphor for that movie. Yes, let's go with that. So yeah, the long and the short of it is, I don't recommend Bad Fish. It's literally sitting on a 3.2 on IMDb right now, and honestly, I think that's being generous because I would probably give it a lower rating than that. It was just an hour and 24 minutes of boredom and frustration. So yeah, I would say skip Bad Fish. Next.
Yeah, I actually could, with everything Venom said. I'll say I attempted to watch it while I was working. I sometimes use movies that either have no recommendation or low recommendation, or ones I'm given a chance to while I'm working. And yes, it was basically an hour of nothing but talking, and then they threw in like a mermaid scene at the end, and it was the end, and that was the end of me ever thinking about the movie again. So, like Venom said, it gets a big old next.
It wasn't like Big Fish.
No, Big Fish is awesome.
What do you got, Derek, first up?
Okay, first up, we're going to do this quick because we just did a whole like 25 minutes of this earlier. But anyways, watched American Horror Story Cult for the first time, which when we originally talked about it was kind of cool because it was kind of me retroactively watching it, where the aspect where like, holy shit, this show is kind of like in your face, in the aspect where it's like telling you things, and a lot of the shit that's happening actually did kind of fucking happen. It's kind of crazy. But anyways, great performances. Evan Peters knocks it out of the park in this leaders and shit, like Jim Jones and Charles Manson. Pretty awesome shit. And yeah, it's American Horror Story. You know how those seasons usually have like the finale where it's like, oh, it's kind of like the second episode is kind of like the real finale, which, I'm going to get into a little rant now that I'm thinking about it. Because I had to wait for the actual finale of Titans a fucking whole other year because it was the fucking first episode of that show of the second season, where it was weird. It's weird how that's why that show failed. But anyways, yeah, American Horror Story Cult, I recommend it. I know you guys dig it. I know Venom, it's one of your favorite seasons, right?
It is my absolute favorite season of American Horror Story. I know that's a little bit of a hot take, but yeah, Evan Peters' performance as all the cult leaders is absolutely stellar. I think it's one of my favorite adaptations of Charles Manson in well over 20, 30 years. I think he does a great job. It's great to see Twisty again, to see some recognizable characters come back. And then, we get that great episode 9, which leads to the final episode, which we kind of talked about the first time, how American Horror Story has the habit of the final episode of the season not necessarily being like the most exciting with the most reveals. It's usually episode 9 is the big episode, and then the last episode just kind of ties up loose ends and whatnot. So and Cult kind of does the exact same thing. Like episode 9 is the big one, and then 10, it's really just watching our female lead kind of tie up her loose ends and deal with what she's kind of dealt with throughout that season. But yeah, like I said, I think it's Evan Peters' best season of American Horror Story. It does some amazing performances. Rick Springfield and Chaz Bono. I mean, yeah, we got some we got some name recognition and some just great overall performances. And like Derek said, I mean, the fact that in 2024, American Horror Story Cult is actually more poignant now than it was when it came out. I mean, to actually watch all the political debates and the rallies and things like that during that season, it just mirrors exactly what's happening in the country right now. So yeah, if you haven't seen American Horror Story Cult, I would highly recommend it, especially now with what's going on in the country in real life. So yeah, great season.
Yeah, I feel like if you watched it in real time when it was airing, the way I did, you would kind of react to it like, oh, this is like what's going on now, but like a little bit dialed up to an absurd level. But if you watch it in 2024 retroactively, you're like, no, this isn't even absurd enough anymore, because things have just gotten even more absurd than they were when this season actually aired. Did they have the Andy Warhol in this one?
Yeah, Andy Warhol is in this one too, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Also played by Evan
that
Peters.
Whole arc. Yeah, that was so good. Like how they infused that into the story, because I think it was like they showed like revolutionaries from a certain time period and how like it tracked to like modern time. But yeah, this season was really good. In fact, it might be one that I would be interested in rewatching, just for the mere fact that like at the time they put a lot into the story, and it's hard to remember everything about it, but the more I think about it after the discussion, I'm like, yeah, that was a really good season. And it was almost like people weren't ready to accept it at the time, because this one had a more a lot of American Horror Story, they take like events or incidents from the past. Yeah, and this one felt like it was a more commentary on modern times, and sometimes people aren't always ready to have the mirror turn on themselves in like their own era. But now watching it, it's like it's hard to deny that they were pretty accurate with the commentary.
Yeah, hot take. My favorite fucking season of American Horror Story is one that people don't usually like either, and that's Roanoke.
Yeah, I liked Roanoke. I loved Kathy Bates in that.
Dude, she was fucking great.
Dude, one of my favorite, and it is because it was just hilarious to me when I think it was like towards the later part of the season when they go to like visit, or they try to like track down like the people that were in Roanoke, and they show up at her apartment, And first she's trying to be like, no, I'm not that person and all that. And then she comes running out of her apartment with the butcher knife, I think, trying to actually be that character still. That shit cracked me up so much. And she was awesome. Like, because I think this was right around the period where, like, I don't know if it was the first season or a couple seasons into Jessica Lange no longer doing it. Because I know for a while Jessica Lange was like the main female lead every single season. And this one, yeah,
and
I
Angela
can't remember.
Bassett and Kathy Bates were like, we're gonna do it for a little bit longer.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, she was so good. I liked it too. I liked that they went like the found footage and then like
Yeah, it was
and
like
that they're
mockumentary the first half, and then the other half was like found footage style. Like it was
yeah
kind of cool.
yeah I liked it. I liked it too. I want to say without like having seen every single season at once. I know one of my favorites was the second season, Asylum.
Yeah,
I
that
thought
one's
that
pretty
one
good.
it's pretty dark and pretty good. And yeah, but there's so many of them. And I kind of stopped watching after Apocalypse, except for the summer camp one. That one was really good. It just because I think it had a really solid blueprint to go off of, which was like 80s slashers at camps. Like,
Yeah,
if you don't have enough pre-existing properties to like base your story off, then but they did a pretty good job. And the Richard Ramirez stuff was crazy too in that as well.
yeah. I'm about to start double feature the COVID season.
It could be on its way. Pandemic, American Horror Story.
Imagine.
Uh, yeah. All right. My first one up is one I have no joy in having to talk about again, but it's a Speak No Evil remake. I'm the only one on the cast that saw it. No blame to anyone and for not wanting to go see it. It was the only horror movie in the theater that weekend. I was pretty sure we weren't going to be doing it on Fresh Cuts, but I went to see it anyway. James McAvoy, good. The rest of the movie, not so much. I could see if you had not seen the original, how most of the movie you could probably figure fine. It's serviceable. Not memorable though. Like I consider the original memorable, even for the people that have a problem with how bleak it turned out and how the main characters kind of like didn't do anything. I don't want to spoil the original, but I know a lot of people had a problem with what happened, but I still think that movie was really good. Where the remake, it was okay. The cast was okay, but I didn't think the switching of how it ended was justified. Even though if you want to make the choice to make a different ending, I don't necessarily have a problem with that because everyone has, and it was actually I think the original director that was directing this one too, and he came out with the whole explanation. And it's like, well, if you wanted to give a more uplifting ending, why didn't you do it in the original? Like, it just seemed like a weird excuse to me. But I think he also made a comment specifically about American audiences, which I can't really disagree with him on that. But it's like, so what? Challenge us. Like, you don't need to do this. But hey, maybe the
Yeah, be
studios
like
were
the
like,
funny games guy.
yeah, unless the studios were like, if you want it released here, you're gonna, you ain't gonna have that same ending. Who knows? And without spoiling it, if you've seen the original Vanishing and the American remake, think along those lines because it's almost like a very similar change of how the movie ends. I'll leave it at that.
Where's the
So
Rug
now,
Lebowski?
yeah, having to talk about this movie twice in the last hour is way more than I ever want to again. Venom, what's your second pick?
All right, my second pick is the only movie that I'll be happy to talk about a second time because I actually had a really good time with it. This movie falls under late to the party for me, as this movie is a sequel to a film that came out a couple of years ago that I actually did really enjoy. This movie, the sequel, came out in March of this year, and because of one circumstance or another, I just didn't really get a chance to watch it. And I finally sat down and watched it over the last couple of weeks, and I'm actually mad at myself for not watching it. The movie that I'm talking about is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. Now, When I say that I loved the original, I'm not necessarily saying that it's objectively a good film. I want to get that out there right now. I'm not, if I was rating it objectively, it would not get a high rating. It's got a lot of storytelling problems. It's got some suspension of disbelief that's way, way out there. But for whatever it's worth, it's a brainless slasher that was gory and fun. And I am a huge fan of Winnie the Pooh. I literally grew up with Winnie the Pooh. My favorite stuffed animal as a child was a Winnie the Pooh, to the point where I couldn't go to sleep if I didn't have him. Like, I remember sleeping at my aunt's house and forgetting to bring him with me and forcing my father to come out at 2 a.m. to bring me my damn stuffed Winnie the Pooh so I could sleep. So yeah, I am an absolute fan. So Blood and Honey 2. I mean, this movie picks up right where the first one left off. Christopher Robin is now a pariah in the town of Ashdown, even though he's been legally exonerated of all the murders from the first movie. Obviously, since they never found Winnie the Pooh or Rabbit, who were the two killers in the first movie, the entirety of the town pretty much thinks that Christopher Robin just got away with murder. So, of course, it starts with the bullying and the town kind of, vandalizing his car, vandalizing his house, things like that. But then, once the characters in the 100-Acre Wood start to realize that people in Ashdown are starting to get more wise to the fact that there may be mutated animals out in the 100-Acre Wood, and more people are coming out with weapons and trying to hunt them down, they decide to go on the offensive rather than just wait around for their own death. One of the things I really liked about this one too, and this kind of speaks to me being an original Winnie the Pooh fan, is the characters. In the first movie, the killers are just Winnie the Pooh and Rabbit. That's all that we get. But in this movie, we get the return of Winnie the Pooh, we get Owl, and we get Piglet. And then we also get a surprise character, which I'm going to keep under my hat for now, but anybody who is a fan of Winnie the Pooh probably knows who the surprise character is. This character has such a great intro with an awesome... Yeah, an awesome Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone type one-liner for his intro, and I literally jumped off my couch when I saw it. I was so happy. And then from that moment on, it is an absolute gore fest. I mean, we actually get a rave massacre where there's a rave with at least, maybe 50 to 100 people there. And Winnie the Pooh and his cohorts just decimate everyone at this rave, in search of Christopher Robin. Because if you saw the first one, you remember that all the animals from the 100-Acre Wood hate Christopher Robin because they think that he abandoned them, when he became an adult, like he had no interest in playing with them anymore since he wasn't a child. Another great thing about this movie is that we actually get some backstory. We get some explanation, scientific explanation even, about how these man creatures exist. How we have a man bear, a man pig, a man owl, and then, a couple of other creatures. And it actually works for me. It's over the top, it's silly, but in the context of this film and this cinematic world, I'm okay with it. It works for me. And even though the ending is I wouldn't go so far as to say ambiguous, but I would say open-ended. It's very obvious that we're probably going to get a third Winnie the Pooh movie soon. I would imagine sooner rather than later. This one came out less than 2 years after the first one, so I would imagine probably sometime in 25 or 26, we'll get Blood and Honey 3. And what's kind of cool, too, is that the end credits of Blood and Honey 2 kind of tip their hat as to what creatures we might actually be getting in the third movie. And we're finally going to be actually getting characters that are not part of the Winnie the Pooh universe. They are still part of the Disney universe, but they're not part of the Winnie the Pooh universe. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Check out the movie. If you haven't seen this one, if you haven't seen the first one, I would recommend watching it. Both movies are a solid 90 minutes, so they're not a long watch. They both open up with really cool animated sequences to kind of catch everyone up to where the story is up to this point. But like I said, once the creatures show up, it is just a bloodbath. It's a gore fest. And this one especially, I actually enjoyed Blood and Honey 2 more than the first one. Way more kills, way more creative kills, more creatures. Like I said, twice as many creatures in this one as we get in the first one. Like I said, we only get Pooh and Rabbit in the first one. But yeah, just a really, really fun shut off your brain and watch all these good-looking young people get cut up into pieces. If that's what you're into, I can't imagine this movie won't work for you. Obviously, there's the ridiculousness of it being Winnie the Pooh and taking place in the 100-Acre Wood, which is almost a bastardization of the original property, which was a beloved kids' book and then film. So, but I can get past all that because this movie is just fun as hell, the first time I talked about it, I brought up the Banana Splits because just like with a movie like the Banana Splits, if it's a horror movie based on a previous kid's property, you don't expect The Exorcist, you don't expect The Shining, you don't expect some kind of horror masterpiece. But you get exactly what you came for, especially with Blood and Honey. Some of the other examples, like the Mickey Mouse one, or the Grinch one, the mean one, yeah, some of those are terrible. But this one, I gotta say, if you accept the silliness for what it is, I think this movie is a damn good time. So I would highly recommend checking these out. Like I said, if you haven't seen the first one, go ahead and check them out. I did a double feature. Both of them are 90 minutes, so I mean it's a nice even 3 hours in and out, and like I said, it's a damn fun time. And especially you might as well catch up because it's almost a guarantee that we're going to get a third one, which is going to be even more over the top, I would imagine. So, revisiting the first two is probably a good idea. And if you haven't checked them out, watch them for the first time. I'm not going to say that they're great movies. I'm not going to say that they're objectively, awesome slashers, but they are just fun movies. If you can accept the silliness of it, then I think you'll have a good time. So I highly recommend both of them. So check them out if you haven't.
Nice.
All right, yeah.
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna have to double feature them out because all the negative talk about the first one kind of kept me away from the second one too. Even though, to echo your sentiments, I have heard more positive on the second one than the first one. So I will make time.
I got a funny feeling that a lot of the people that didn't like the first one probably aren't hardcore fans of Winnie the Pooh, because I feel like there's so many nods and winks to the original properties that if you're a hardcore horror fan now who grew up with Winnie the Pooh in the 70s and 80s or beyond, I can't see how you wouldn't have fun with these movies. Like I said, no one goes into Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey expecting, Long Legs or Late Night with the Devil. We're lucky if we get Tarot or Night Swim or something. And objectively, these movies are better than either of those two. So yeah, I would say check them out. They're fun.
Tarot.
Cool. All right, what you got, Derek?
Speaking of Tarot, I watched Tarot.
Yeah. Sorry.
It was all right. Maybe because I didn't pay for it, I didn't feel bad. That's
helps.
Always good. Netflix.
I like the creature design.
Yeah,
like the design of Tarot I thought was cool. The movie sucks. The storytelling is terrible. The acting is not great. But the creature design I thought was cool.
Yeah, the only actor I knew in the movie was the fucking guy from Spider-Man, Ned.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, he's the only
guy
one
in the
I
chair.
actually. Yeah, he's always in the chair, or he's magic. But anyways, I agree. Like, generic is all fuck. But I've seen worse movies on Netflix too. To be honest, It was it wasn't too bad. It was all right. I liked it. It was solid.
Like was a stretch for me.
It was all right. Those creature designs are the best part for sure.
Absolutely. I like the tarot deck too, but
Yeah, that was pretty
so
sick.
the design of the movie I think was all cool. The creature design, the set design, the design of those cards, like all of that was cool, but the storytelling was such garbage. I couldn't get into it. So
Yeah, the only thing that kind of blew my mind though is like the one scene with the train station and it's fucking Haymarket Station in Boston. because so it was kind of cool in that aspect. I'm like, oh, I know that place. That's kind of cool. You know, those things kind of soften me. Like if it's filmed in my home like area, I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. I was there.
I can't do that because I live in LA, and every other movie I watch, I'd be like, oh yeah, I know that place. I know that place. I know that place. It would be too much.
Yeah. It's very rare here.
Exactly.
I switched it up a bit from the last time. But on the Royal Tarot, yeah, it's not great, but if you have like time to squeeze one movie in, yeah, I'd say watch it like I don't know, like a night where you like get some herbs or get a drink in you. It'll be all right.
Yeah, it's a jump scare factory, just like you would expect from, Blumhouse or Lionsgate or whoever made that movie. But it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not the worst thing I've seen in 2024 by any stretch, but it's still not great.
Yeah, I agree. Like this has been a lot worse.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Blumhouse has definitely put out worse stuff this year. Speaking of something worse, well, at least on par, maybe worse. Apartment 7A, the prequel to Rosemary's Baby that nobody asked for. In fact, so little people asked for it that it ended up going straight to Paramount Plus. And if you have the unfortunate experience of watching it like I did, you know exactly why it went there, because it went there to die so no one could see it. Everyone could deny they were involved in making it and eventually disappear.
It was like that one
altogether.
Paranormal Activity movie.
Oh, God, yeah. Julia Garner, she's good as always, but she can only do so much with a script like this. In fact, I would say the cast itself is not the problem. Everyone did their best impersonation of characters because it takes place in the same apartment building. If for anyone that has no idea about this movie, it's basically the story of the girl that they had chosen to give birth to the spawn of Satan before Rosemary, that at the beginning of Rosemary's Baby took a dive out the apartment window. So if you were terribly interested to see this a different person go through the same but not really the same because it's much more muted and generic version of what happened in Rosemary's Baby, this is the movie for you. I'm guessing that doesn't appeal to the majority of the horror watching audience, so the movie's probably not for you. I would say if you haven't seen Rosemary's Baby, just watch that instead. One of my all-time favorites, so I could be biased in this, but when I think a movie's bad, I just think it's bad, and this one wasn't very good at all. So Julia Garner, you keep up the good work, and maybe you just did this to get like paid. I don't know. I can't imagine a straight to Paramount Plus movie would be that huge of a paycheck. But I don't know. She probably had her reasons for doing it. So it is what it is. And that's it. That's the most I ever want to hear about this movie again. Back to
just go watch The First Omen instead.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, that's
Just
true.
do a Rosemary's Baby and The Omen double feature, a Satan double feature. I love it.
Exactly.
All right, so for my last movie for the episode, I have the unfortunate distinction of bringing to the table the first Asian ghost story that bored me to tears. I mean, I wanted to like this movie so bad. This movie was released in South Korea in May of 2023. It was released here in the States on December 26th of 2023. And obviously, by the week between Christmas and New Year's, I'm not watching new movies. I'm getting my top 10 together. So generally anything that comes out in the final calendar week of a year, I'll count for the following year. Much like last year with the Addams Family movie that they released right at the end of the year, I counted it for the following year. But anyway, the movie I'm talking about today is called The Ghost Station. This movie is about a public service worker who witnesses a death inside of a train station, and the police don't seem to be much help in solving what happened during this incident. So this guy recruits some of his friends to try to help him figure out what the what the mystery is and what's going on in this train station. Like I said, folks, unfortunately, this one is just incredibly slow, incredibly dull. Once we actually get the reveal of what is haunting this station, it's not very interesting. On top of the fact that it left me scratching my head how they even got to that conclusion. Like, I watched the movie. I was paying attention to it. It's not in English, of course. It is in Korean. So I'm reading subtitles. Maybe the subtitles were translated poorly, because by the time we get the reveal, I'm scratching my head like, why is that supposed to be interesting? I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, the Ghost Station 2023 literally is the first Asian ghost story I've ever seen that just bored the hell out of me. And I love Asian ghost stories. I mean, I've been watching them my whole life, going back to the yokai movies of the early 70s, which are definitely more fun than they are scary. But yeah, the Ghost Station just unfortunately did not work for me. Some decent characters, decent cinematography. It looks nice. At first, I actually thought it was a found footage movie, but it's not. It's actually a full production that it's shot in a way that it almost makes it feel like it's found footage, but it's definitely not. It's just the kind of the shooting style that they use. But yeah, one good thing, it's only an hour and 20 minutes, so it's not like I had to sit with it for too long. I didn't have to be bored for 2.5 hours or anything like that. So yeah, unfortunately, the Ghost Station is one that I would say skip. It's sitting on a 4.7 rating on IMDb right now, which might actually be a little generous to this movie. Like I said, the tension and atmosphere is there. It's just the scares are kind of lame. The reveals are kind of lame. Just, the how it all comes to fruition, or the finale of the film. It's all none of it really works all that much for me. If you're a, Asian ghost story completionist, I would say, check it out if you want to. It's not, it is, like I said, it's only an hour and 20 minutes, so at least you can be in and out quickly. But otherwise, yeah, I can't say too many more positive things about the Ghost Station.
That's just sad.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, like I said, almost 50 years of watching Asian horror, and this is the first one. I finally found one that just bored the hell out of me. Too bad.
Yeah, that sucks, because I feel like we're kind of hitting that gluttonous period where there's a lot of them that are kind of pampers, where you feel like I've been here, done that, but they're not necessarily boring or bad. It's just that they don't have the same innovation because they fall into the same kind of like plot and plot details. But that doesn't mean they're boring. So if now, I hope that's not the next trend of like they just start becoming boring.
Yeah, God. It's funny too, because the same week that I watched The Ghost Station, I actually watched Spiral, which Spiral, for those who don't know, was supposed to be a sequel to the original Ring Goo. It actually came out the same year that the American Ring movie came out. And that movie I didn't like very much. I'm not going to say it was boring necessarily, but compared to The Ring, it's definitely a major step down. And I think Asian audiences were so like upset with Spiral that they released The Ring 2 like literally less than a year later to try to just wash away the taste of Spiral. And what's funny too is I was actually looking for a different movie. I was looking for Uzumaki, which of course is the film based on Junji Ito's manga. Which I fucking love. I love. And for those who don't know, too, there's a new animated series. There's a new Uzumaki animated series that just started this week or last week on Adult Swim. And it actually looks like the original artwork in Junji Ito's manga. So if you're a fan of that manga, or just fucked up cinema in general, I watched the first episode, and it is fucking awesome. It's potentially one of the best animated Junji Ito properties that I've seen. And Ito's gotten at least 3 different animated series, one here in the States and a couple out in Japan. But this first episode of Uzumaki was just spectacular, so I would recommend that. But yeah.
It was Adult Swim, right?
That is Adult Swim, yes, sir. I think the first episode's available on YouTube if you want to check it out.
Okay. Sounds good.
Also, if you have HBO Max, they own all
Yeah.
the Adult Swim property now too.
Yes. It is on.
Or
It's
I'm
on Max
sorry,
the
now
day
it's
after.
just Max. Yeah, just
Ah,
Matt.
I know what you mean. We all still say HBO Max because Max
Yeah,
sounds like Cinemax. So it's
yeah,
like
me
there used
too.
to be a
That's why I thought
Cinemax
it was
app.
weird.
Yeah,
Or it sounds like
exactly.
that movie about the German Shepherd. Max.
Terrible.
I thought
Yeah, I knew the first episode hit last night, like it actual aired, and I was
Yeah.
trying to make a decision, should I watch each one as it comes out or wait, because I think it's 4 total episodes for now.
Mhm.
How long do you remember how long it was?
I think it was one of the 15-minute things.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
was really late. It was like 1 a.m. But it might have just been so good that it went by so quick that it felt like 15 minutes. So so don't quote me. I might be wrong. But I've been looking forward to this series since the first trailer dropped about a month ago, and I've literally been chomping at the bit for this. I adore Junji Ito's manga. Tomie, just some of the stuff that he's done just really fucks with your mind. And
Yeah, that just got
Uzumaki,
announced for a Blu-ray too. The feature film version of Tomie, the first movie.
yes, which I'm excited about. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's very eerie and unsettling, like that style.
exactly. Oh, exactly. That black and white manga style just works so much for me. A lot
Yeah,
of
I
people
have the
think that
whole
black and white can't be visceral, but my friends, black and white can be very visceral. Have you not seen Tetsuo the Iron Man?
yeah, for sure.
It-
Like I actually own like the whole like Tomie collection by Junji Ito, and I read that all the time. It's fucking great.
Yep.
Cool.
That's it for me.
All right, Derek, what do you got up for the final one?
Okay, this is my book of the review section where I actually review a book. I'm not gonna call it book of the month because I'm not that fast of a reader, guys. I usually read like certain like short stories collections sometimes when I'm at work or in books. And I've been gonna be talking about a book I've been reading lately called it's a book series actually. There's 3 of them out now. The third one was just released, and the fourth one comes out in October, which I already had pre-ordered because that's how crazy I am. I'm a Kindle book whore because it's crazy because some of these books are like fucking $2, so you're like buy, but then it adds up and you're like fuck. But anyways, let's talk about my problems. I didn't even know. And the book is called The Ojanox, Scream in the Dark, Book 1. Oh yes, and by the way that this book is wrapping up, because I'm like 79% done with it. I'm very near the end. I feel like there's going to be like a few cliffhangers that it's going to follow into the next book. It's kind of like that aspect where it's like a serial novel. You don't know how the actual book's going to end till the series is done. It feels like it's gonna be like that type of journey. But it's very like small town atmosphere. Like say like Salem's Lot by Stephen King, or like something by like Ray Bradbury, like Something This Way Comes, or Dandelion Wine. Like that small town atmosphere, which I love because those are 2 of my favorite authors right there, King and Bradbury, and they do those very well. It has that aspect. It actually makes it fly by it because you're getting to learn about these characters. And uh we talked about Game of Thrones previously, and like maybe like the first recording of this, I made the joke, yeah, they don't get attached to these characters all that much because some of them get killed like 2 chapters ahead of when they're introduced, and you get some backstory on them, and it's kind of funny in that aspect of the book. But overall, it has a cool like Halloween atmosphere, which it's like that aesthetic of something like Ray Bradbury's, like Something This Way Comes, or like even the Halloween Tree, which are 2 of my favorite books growing up reading. In that aspect, where I dig, and like the whole aspect of Scream of the Dark. It's actually a haunted house. One of the kid characters that gets intertwined with like the story it actually makes, and it's kind of a cool aspect of that's how this is starting out. You get a little bit of happiness before the town starts to turn to shit. You see like the evolution of the town evolving, and it's a cool aspect. I'm kind of curious where the next book goes. I might take a break, and because I like to branch off because I read a lot of different things like cosmic horror novels now and shit like that, and short story collections. I actually rebought like a side tangent. I actually bought a short story collection by Ray Bradbury that I love. I actually read the actual short story that the Beast from 20,000 Fans was based on, the Foghorn, for the first time. And yeah, I just love to read. Like that's like one of the aspects of like when I'm at work that I do. It makes me think more in that aspect instead of scrolling down TikTok, which usually I do sometimes when I'm watching TV. Let's be honest, we're all those scrolling videos on those all those pages now. It's everywhere. Like you go to a new fucking Instagram has it now. It's fucking it's brutal. But anyways, yeah, if you like to read and you want something to read during the Halloween season, yeah, you check out the Ojanox book one, Scream in the Dark. Ooh, spooky.
Hell yeah. I mean, there's never a shortage of stuff to read out there. And maybe people will find the audiobook version too if they prefer
Yeah.
listening. Yeah, hell yeah. All right. Finally up for me. This is one that I assume no one's seen either. This will, I guess, break the trend of the first two that I didn't like. This one gets I don't know what I would grade it, but definitely not as bad as the first two. This one's like a indie low budget movie that I kind of just watched on a whim. I think I saw some other podcaster, I think it was Alex from Beyond the Void. He had a video reviewing it. I didn't watch his video, but the cover art of the movie kind of intrigued me. And I think it's pronounced Beazle or maybe Beazell. But basically, the plot of this movie is there's this house in the suburbs where in the basement lives some type of like cursed witch demon figure. And the plot of the movie kind of follows its encounter with people in and out of the house over the course of like, I think 50, 60 years. You know, the new people buy the house, come in, live there. They usually end up dead from the entity in the basement. I enjoy this one. It's very lo-fi in its presentation. I actually think that kind of helps with the effects and the gags and stuff. I guess my main criticism is like I think the first half of the movie is actually stronger. Like the incidents we get, what kind of like the cold open to kind of introduce us to the situation, and then the first story of like what happens after that. I guess you could consider those the first two segments. It's not an anthology necessarily because it's just one. It's the same house, but you could almost say it's like a anthology adjacent because you get new characters introduced at various points because they're the new inhabitants of the house. And like our cold opening involves like a kid, and when a kid meets their demise, that's always crazy and not expected. And then the next one involves it looks like it's like a podcaster or a videographer guy that's kind of like starting out, maybe not starting out, but he's not famous or anything, and the owner of the house wants to bring him to document this entity because the owner of the house, like his wife and son, went through an ordeal, and I think he was initially accused by law enforcement of being at the root of it, and he got acquitted due to lack of evidence, but he doesn't think that's good enough. He actually wants to clear his name, so he brings in this guy to like document all this stuff, and it's really good. A little twist happens during that story, and I thought it was really well done. The main issue is like after those two segments, the next segment or the rest of the movie is kind of okay. It kind of gets like a little generic after that, kind of drawn out as far as what we get. It almost feels like the first two segments were a setup for like one long segment at the end that I didn't find as compelling, but it still wasn't bad. This one is spelled Beezel, Beezel or Beezel. I don't know. I maybe that's like devil in some language.
Well, I think
It's
it's Bezible. I think it's short for Visible.
but
Devil's
maybe I have
name.
it spelled wrong on my notes if it's Bezible, but um
You're the best,
uh
Mike.
yeah, it's an American production, but I thought I saw something about it being filmed in Turkey, but I don't think that necessarily has anything to do with the lore because everyone in the movie is American, so it would probably just like a cheaper place to film, maybe.
I don't
But
know. I would go to
anyways,
Turkey after watching Midnight Express. Let's put it that way.
well, not if you want to smuggle. What was he smuggling back? Like heroin or
Mar-
something?
marijuana.
Damn, he went through that for marijuana. Crazy.
Yeah.
That's a really good movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember it being really good, and it
Well,
has
see,
the theme from Art Bell.
see, we're talking about good movies when we're talking about bad movies. That's the problem.
Yeah. But as far as this one goes, I would recommend it for being a low budget kind of indie movie. I think it's cool and some cool scary stuff actually happens in the movie that I think people would like. Probably, nothing that's going to be on a top 10 list, but I still found it enjoyable. Glad I gave it a shot, gave it a chance based on not knowing much about it going in. And I guess I'll leave it at that because the other one on my list was Beetlejuice, the sequel, which isn't it's not technically horror, but I don't have a lot of great things to say about that one either. So that's why I was like, let me get something else on the list to talk about. But that's all I got. Is there anything anyone else wants to mention before we get into news, if we have any news?
Oh God, no.
Yeah, nothing really.
All right, then. Venom, you have a news item, don't you?
I got a couple of things. Well, I don't know if this is news or a burning question. I guess it's both, actually, because I want feedback from everyone. Lionsgate this week announced that they would be utilizing AI for writing future horror films. Obviously, not all their horror films, but they did basically announce that they are accepting AI as an inevitability that potentially, it's going to write some movies for them. Now, if you ask me, I feel like companies like Lionsgate and Blumhouse have been using AI to write their scripts for years now because of the quality of some of the films that they're releasing. But the fact that they officially announced it now, and we have to accept that these movies are going to be written by AI. Not all of them, like I said, but I'm sure when the first one comes out, they'll make a big deal about it. It'll probably be in the trailer, the first AI written horror movie or whatever the case you want to go with. But obviously, I'm not a creative person necessarily. I am a musician, not that I've played for years, but as far as like creative writing and things like that, it's not really my thing. But I feel like, it feels like it's a cop out. It feels like this is a way for movie studios to not have to pay a writer to write their films. And I just wanted to get like your feedback on that from you guys, because I'll say it right now. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I think it's the death of creativity. I've been saying for years that remakes and sequels and things like that are the death of creativity because it's so easy to make a remake since you've already got the property already made, you've got the base story already written. It just depends on how much you as the filmmaker want to change the original. Mike just talked about the James McAvoy movie and how that felt like a meaningless, remake. And then, of course, Apartment 7A feels like a meaningless prequel. But AI, to me, that really, really spells the death of creativity, especially if AI written movies actually turn out to be maybe not objectively good, but if they actually make money, there's no reason for studios to not continue that trend. So yeah, basically I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that because I hate it. So whoever wants to speak, go ahead.
Yeah, it's fucking stupid.
Yeah,
short and to the point.
I'm thinking there must be some type of loophole in the SAG contracts because I know those pertain mostly to like the actors and the talent themselves. You can't do like AI renderings of them, but maybe that had nothing to do
like
with
an
like
AI version of like Helen Bonham Carter from Terminator Salvation. This is the movie I wrote.
Oh, stop. Yeah, Mike. SAG is the Screen Actors Guild, so that's only actors. You're thinking of the Writers Guild.
Okay,
The
it's a
Writers Guild
different
is the
one.
one
Okay.
that would get pissy about this. And I'm actually surprised that I haven't heard more blowback about this. Like, I figured the Writers Guild would have jumped all over Lionsgate. Like, what the fuck are you doing? How are you going to announce that you're not going to use human writers, at least for some of your movies? But there's been no blowback yet, so I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is if like whatever current contracts they're under were signed long enough ago that it was never like a something to consider, and then when their contract is up, then they'll be like striking over it. But
let's be honest, Lionsgate's not a great company. They suck.
aside from the Saw franchise, Lionsgate doesn't really have much that entertains me anymore.
Yeah,
anyway.
they released Haunted in
haven't been.
Connecticut.
Yeah, I didn't mind the first one, the first Haunting in Connecticut. The second one, that Ghost of Georgia. Oof.
Oh, that's the worst title ever in a movie.
Yeah. Haunting
the
in
other funny
Connecticut,
thing is,
Ghost
like-
of Georgia. Contradiction.
the funny thing is, like, people already assume 75% of the product that comes out of Blumhouse is AI.
Exactly.
Even
That's
if
what
it's
I was
really
saying.
not.
But
Yeah,
based
like
on
the Imaginary
it feels
movie.
like they already are using AI.
Yeah, the Imaginary movie felt like something that was written by AI.
Oh God, and Tarot even. We were just talking about Tarot. That kind of felt
Well,
like
see, the other thing I was thinking of was like, what if you like run like ideas through like an AI generator and then it spits out like a good movie, but then the studio's like, okay, reimagine this, but with a fraction of the budget, and then they have to like keep dumbing it down for the AI. So they like, because like if you look at like Blumhouse's like, we'll leave the exceptions to the side because we know not everything Blumhouse puts out is trash, but they have a specific model of like, give me a $5 to $8 million budget. I don't care like how good it is, but if we can get the movie made for that cost, it's gonna probably make its money back because people go to horror movies. So it's like that's the other issue is like, is this gonna be made specifically because they just want to turn and burn cheap budget movies that will make their money back, and then they can use that money on other things as versus like, no, we actually want to use AI to make quality product because it's never usually to make something bigger and better. It's like to contract and cheapen.
You know how many fucking Lionsgate direct to fucking DVD Mel Gibson and Bruce Willis movies I own? A fucking shitload, and they all fucking suck.
I'm not surprised. It's definitely something to keep an eye on because you're right. Maybe because all we know of now is it being Lionsgate, it's a little more under the radar. But like, I'm sure Lionsgate has a parent company, so if they went like wider and it started hitting the pocketbooks of like some more
They're hurting ever
notorious
since they lost
writers.
all the Miramax.
Yeah. But I don't like the idea either. I think it's, if you want to call it like a small start, well, it always starts small and then it always grows, and then you're going to get copycats, and then it's going to start hitting the studios that matter, and it's not going to be good. Like who thinks the end result of this is going to be good? Not me.
Nope. Studio executives. They're probably the only ones.
Oh, it's gonna look like some of those weird AI fucking Wes Anderson like directing Lord of the Rings fucking videos.
I mean, possibly, but that's the thing. Is like, where does it end? I mean, they start using AI for writers. Soon they'll start using AI for cinematography. Then they'll start using AI for actors. They'll just computer generate all actors, and
Jesus,
we'll get to the point that no humans are actually making movies.
Bicentennial Man.
Well, yeah, worse than that even. But yeah, no, I mean, I know what you mean. But yeah, just where does it end is the point. Like, this is the start. It should have never started. But now that it has started, where is the inevitable end? And that's what terrifies me, is that the inevitable end is going to be completely AI films shot, directed, edited, effects, just everything is going to be AI. And it's like, well, then, who gets the credit for the movie? Like every movie is
Alan
going to be
Smithy.
directed by Alan Smithy. Exactly, Alan Smithy gets all the credit.
And Mick G.
But yeah, like I said, this is one of those moments in history that it could be nothing. It could just kind of, disappear. Like maybe Lionsgate just doesn't even move forward with it. They just decide, fuck it, it's not even worth it. Or, like I said, the more terrifying possibility that just more that AI becomes more and more involved with our content creation, movies, television shows, hell, even art. I mean, how many AI videos and AI 3D art are we seeing right now that looks great, and some of it could even be passed as like oil paintings or something that was actually created by a human. But like I said, it's the inevitable end that terrifies me. So
Yeah, and even like from earlier this year, Late Night with the Devil, it got a lot of like flack for that, and like that was, I don't even think there was like a ton of AI generated art in that, but just the little bits that were, people gave it flack. So like once that starts being more expansive, then we'll definitely see the way people are reacting.
Exactly.
Yeah. And those
I mean,
AI
maybe
reviews,
the younger generation maybe won't care. Like once it becomes the norm, it'll just be the old farts like us that are complaining about it.
we relate to the Muppets, the old guys in the Muppets. We are them now.
There you go.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, if you think about it, like you could apply that to CGI, where like for those of us that grew up in a practical effects world and kind of like the beginnings of CGI, or versus now where like people just grow up in the world where CGI in every single big movie is just the norm.
Exactly.
So like attitudes do change. There's always like the running commentary of the world, it's no longer a world for me anymore. Well, that could apply to like AI generated everything.
Exactly.
Everything's AI. Like even on Facebook, you like search AI. I'm like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Just give me wriggle a search.
But yeah.
I just bought a new laptop, and the new Windows really pushes AI. And it's like I keep trying to bypass it. Like I don't want anything to do with it. Yeah, but it keeps pushing it. It's like, would you like AI to help you with this? Like, no, motherfucker, leave me alone.
Leave me alone, Skynet.
The laptop I bought a few months ago, underneath the number pad, there's an AI button that you can hit,
wow.
and I think it brings up chat GDP. Like,
I love that every movie is now AI too. Now, like everything's about fighting AI. Like the new Mission Impossible, the villain's AI. Like what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, but then for every good one, we get like 10 Afraids or Taos or some of those other awful AI horror films that we get. Ugh.
Smart House.
No, stop it.
That was your OG.
Oh god! Speaking of that, there's a pretty bad. It was kind of like a Megan-ish movie, but starring Megan Fox. It was terrible.
Yeah.
The OG really was Demon Seed.
Kinda. Yeah, I guess I could see that.
Did you see Subservience, Venom?
Oh hell no! I'm not watching a movie with Megan Fox in it. I have fucking taste.
It was bad.
Yeah, no. I didn't need anyone to tell me it was bad to know it was bad. Just the movie poster alone screams awful movie.
It was so bad they had to resort to the guy having sex with the AI robot.
Oh, wait, hey, if you got a robot that looks like Megan Fox, I mean, what else are you going to do with it than have sex? I mean, hey, I'm not going to deny the way that she looks, all right? She's a stunning woman. That's fine. But she can't act her way out of a fucking paper bag, so I have no interest in watching her movies. Yeah. The day that she releases a sex tape, I'll watch that.
Yeah, especially after all those stories you hear about, like the casting of her in Transformers with Michael Bay. Like that, yeah. Washing his car.
Yeah, silly.
Yeah, good times.
Good times.
Michael Bay.
And then one other thing that I wanted to start doing, I don't know how much interest we're really going to get. I don't know. For those, obviously for longtime listeners, you guys know I am a toy collector. Specifically, I am a Funko Pop collector. I was thinking about maybe doing like whenever we do an episode, maybe talk about some of the horror pops that have come out recently and maybe some that are going to be coming up. So I'll try it for this episode. Let's see if I get any feedback. If I either get no feedback or negative feedback, I might not do it again. But if anybody out there is a Funko Pop collector, specifically a horror Funko Pop collector, then this next segment is for you. So like I said, I'm going to go over a couple of the Funko Pops that came out since we recorded our last episode. It looks like we've got a couple from Insidious that were released, specifically the Wheezing Demon from Insidious 3, and we finally get a Funko Pop for the Lipstick Demon. Unfortunately, they call him the Red-Faced Demon on the box, not the Lipstick Demon. I don't know why they decided to go with red face, but there it is. We also got new Nosferatu Pops, and these are for the original Nosferatu movie, not the Robert Eggers movie that's going to be coming out soon. So original Count Orloff Pops were also released. We got a new Abigail Pop, or the first Abigail Pop to come out, which is basically just her in her ballerina outfit with the bloody mouth and everything.
Dang, that's interesting. I wasn't sure that Abigail is like a big enough thing for them to make a pop out of it. That's cool.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that Funko doesn't necessarily go by if the movie is successful, because the next pops I'm going to talk about come from potentially one of the worst movies of last year, I think it was. Yeah, it was last year. So the last of the pops that came out since our last episode, believe it or not, Exorcist Believer. Yes.
What?
We actually, they released 2 pops, one for Angela and one for the other girl. Basically the 2 girls, the little white girl and the little black girl, they got pops. Now, I hated that movie. I famously hated that movie to the point that I wished cancer on David Gordon Green, if you guys remember correctly. But these pops look great, so I did actually buy them. As much as I hate the movie, I bought them and I put them in a closet. I'm not displaying them. I don't want anyone to know that I bought these pops. But for whatever it's worth, they look pretty damn cool. Obviously, it's the girls in their possessed form, after, with the eyes glossed over and all the scratches and everything on their face. So I did kind of like them, so I bought them because I am a corporate whore, so whatever. And then I did also want to announce a large horror release that's coming in October. For those of you who have a Hot Topic near you, on October 13th, Hot Topic is going to be releasing a whole series of new horror pops under the Hot Topic Scare Fair line. They did Scare Fair last year, where we got Michael Myers Behind the Hedges. We got a new Chucky and Tiffany pop. A Blacklight Xenomorph, a Blacklight Jumbo from Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And they started announcing the ones that they're going to release this year. And so far, we've gotten 4 that have been released. And they're all pretty damn awesome. The first one is going to be a Leatherface pop, but it's a pop from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Not from the original movie. So he's actually got a different face on. He doesn't have the normal recognizable Leatherface on. He's got one that's a little bit newer, like from a fresher victim. Mm-hmm. So it looks kind of weird, but but he's still holding a chainsaw, so it's Leatherface. So that's cool. We're getting another Art the Clown pop, but this one is potentially the best one that they've released yet. They've already released 5 Art the Clown pops for those who haven't picked them up yet. Those are currently available now at most places if you want to look for them. And but the one that they're releasing is the one of him sitting on the toilet at the laundromat in Terrifier 2, where he basically takes all his clothes off and he's washing them and he's just sitting there reading the newspaper. I fucking love, if you see the pop, it looks amazing because Art has his big shit-eating grin on his face and he's almost naked, just sitting reading the newspaper. So I absolutely love that pop. I'm really excited about that one. Another one that's coming out that I think Mike will be interested in, we're finally getting an Evil Ash from Army of Darkness, and it looks fucking awesome. Oh, God.
Best character ever.
Oh, it's so cool. And he's got the full outfit on with the
yeah.
helmet. He's got the full war outfit on. It is awesome. So yeah, Evil Ash. And then the last one that they've announced so far, there's probably going to be more announced in the coming weeks, but at least for the ones that they've announced so far, we're also getting an Art the Clown soda. So for those who don't know, Funko also makes sodas, which is basically It's a smaller action figure. It's smaller than the Pops, and it comes in a soda can. So you actually, you take the top of it off, and the figure is inside. So we're also getting, and that is going to be a bloody Art the Clown. So he's going to be all covered.
I gotta assume too, we're eventually going to get a Santa Art the Clown because of Terrifier 3.
I would imagine we'll get that next year sometime. Yeah, because Funko's not ultra quick with releasing Pops. Like, we're just getting the Terrifier 2 Pops now, a year later.
The fucking Gigan after fucking 35 years.
Yes, Gigan just came out this week and sold out quickly on the Funko shop. So, not that it's really, it's horror adjacent at least, but yes, we do have a new series of Godzilla Pops coming out. Yes. A brand new series of 5 Godzilla Pops, which includes Godzilla 54, Godzilla 84, Godzilla 99, Shin Godzilla, and a Blacklight Godzilla -1. So look out for those.
Yes.
Those are starting to creep in stores. They're not all out yet, but I have seen Shin Godzilla in stores, so that one's currently available.
Yes.
Now, of the Pops that I talked about earlier that have already been released, all of them are readily available except Abigail. Abigail sold out quickly, to the point where I'm seeing Abigail sold on secondary sites for $30 to $50 already. So if you can get yourself an Abigail under $20-$25, I would say jump on it, because the price on that is just going to go up. Funko,
Mike, how do you feel about that?
I'm actually okay with it, because I know, because I follow Funko so closely, I know when the release dates are coming. So even if something sells out in minutes, I'm usually right there waiting to get it. Like Gigan dropped at 9:30 a.m. this past Monday. At 9:31, I bought 2 of them. So I'm right there, ready to pick them up. So like I said, I just wanted to give you guys fair warning. All the Pops that I mentioned should be readily available at Hot Topic or Box Lunch or wherever you get your Funko Pops. Obviously, the Scare Fair Pops that come out on October 13th are exclusive to Hot Topic, so you can only get those at Hot Topic. And that's it for Mr. Venom's Collecting Corner. So hopefully if you guys got any value out of that, let me know on the socials, and maybe I'll keep doing it. But I love Funko Pops. It's just, I'm literally, it's my side hustle right now. Like the most of the money that I'm making right now is from reselling Pops. So yeah, it's giving me a little bit of a living right now. So I definitely owe it that, but I do love it regardless. I have over 800 pieces in my collection. I have over 100 pieces listed online for sale right now. So yeah. If anybody's ever looking for a Funko Pop, no matter how hard it is to find, hit me up. I'll find it for you.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, the ones I have on my wish list that are like out of my price range are like the old Universal Monsters ones.
I've got the whole line.
They've probably been out of the rotation for so long.
Yeah, I just don't have the original Frankenstein. I've got the re-release of Frankenstein where he's holding the flower. But as far as the originals, I have them all. I'm actually looking at them right now. Dracula, Bride of Dracula, Wolfman, Phantom of the Opera, The Mummy, and the Metaluna Mutant. And the Metaluna Mutant is from This Island
Earth. Yep.
Which is a very underrated 60s sci-fi movie if you haven't seen it. Check that out. And
it's the main movie from Mysterious Theater 3000.
That's the movie for the Mystery Science 3000 movie that they did back in 96. That's the movie that they riff, This Island Earth, and it's actually a great movie. Like it's not one of those ultra cheesy movies like they usually riff on. It's actually it was a blockbuster. It was like a summer blockbuster when it came out in 1960. It was a Universal movie. I think it was the number 3 grossing movie of that year, like the 3rd highest grossing movie for Universal specifically of that year. So I mean, obviously it's been forgotten over the decades, and now when people watch it, they kind of look at it as a cheesy 60s sci-fi movie, but it definitely deserves more attention than it's getting. So yeah. Back to you, Mike.
The last, I guess you could call it exclusive that I think because most of the ones I bought recently or over the last couple of years have been pretty regular rotation ones, but the last one that I got that was an exclusive was from Walgreens. It was Herman Munster in the Dracula outfit.
Yes, absolutely. Great.
Yeah, and I have that. It was sitting on my fireplace mantle before we had all the floors ripped out. So once everything at the house is done, it'll go right back up on display. Because most of my fireplace mantle, when we first bought the house, I think it was about 6-7 years ago, we didn't really have like a lot of traditional stuff you put up there. So it was a mix of like sports stuff and horror stuff. But I think everything's packed now. But when we unpack it, I'm just gonna take all the sports stuff off because I have so many horror pops that like I could basically line the whole thing up with horror pops and like my other, like I have a Jason mask, a Scream mask, Freddy's glove, that kind of stuff. So I think I'm just
I have a
convert
Jeff
it all
Goldblum.
a Jeff Goldblum, a fly.
Jurassic Park.
Sexy Ian Malcolm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Have him lay across the top,
Yeah.
or get the decal for the wall above it.
I have him lay on Ultraman.
Oh no, poor Ultraman.
Death Wish.
Yeah, I love going to conventions because now you'll have just like Funko Pop vendors there, and sometimes like depending on it, like I've gone to like the Comic Cons and the anime, and sometimes you have to really search their booth to find the horror ones because it'll mostly be like comic book stuff or just general stuff. But if you can find the horror ones in there, and a lot of them they might not know that these horror ones are more rare because they'll be sold for like the same low price as like the other ones. So if I can find them, I'll snatch them up as soon as I see them.
Yeah, exactly. I got Monsterpalooza coming out here actually in 2 weeks. Oh, actually on October 13th, the day that those pops drop at Hot Topic is the first day of Monsterpalooza out here in Burbank. So, and yeah, Monsterpalooza, when you go there and you run into a Funko vendor, it's all horror and it's amazing. I mean, he'll have some like sci-fi and horror adjacent stuff as well, but for the most part, it's all horror. And yeah, I always spend way too much money at horror cons anyway.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, with that said, I think it's time to take a break and come back with our movies that were Venom's picks. Venom, what are your picks? Because we never mentioned them yet.
All right. Well, this month, a couple of weeks ago, I watched a YouTube video where they ranked all 8 or 9 Amicus horror anthologies. I think there's like 8 or 9 of them, I think. They ranked them all, and there were a couple on the list that I hadn't seen. So I thought, hey, I like Amicus. Why not, do an episode on that? So we're doing 2 Amicus anthologies, one that I've seen before and one that is a first-time watch for me. So the one that I've seen before is 1972's Asylum, with stories written by Robert Bloch. And then the second one is 1976's From Beyond the Grave, which was actually the final Amicus horror anthology that they released. So that was the last one they ever did. And that one I had never seen before. So it was a first-time watch for this episode. So yeah, looking forward to talking about those 2 after our break.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, with that said, stick around. We'll be back with some Amicus.
Ooh.
The most terrifying form of evil is that which lurks within the human mind. Asylum. The ultimate in horror.
This is an asylum for the incurably insane.
Asylum. Filled with stark, raving terror. From Robert Bloch, author of Psycho. Asylum. The prison of madness, where few enter and none return. See Asylum. You have nothing to lose but your mind.
This is where the temptations begin. Unlimited temptations.
Can I help you at all?
I'll tell you what, I'll give you 25 quid to get rid of it.
It's a deal.
Each concealing a horrendous nightmare that reaches out from the dark world that lies beyond the grave.
Come in. Whoever you are, come in.
If you are looking for excitement, way beyond the normal. No. If you want to test your nerves beyond endurance, come beyond the mirror on the wall. Step beyond this door to the room of no return. Experience the evil with no name. Steel yourself for the visitor in the night. Every step you take brings you nearer the clutching terror from beyond the grave. Find me another.
One quick stab. Just order me.
We've got him! Where the white worms crawl from the sinner's grave, leave us forever away!
Denied me life.
Susan!
Ghostly, kept alive by the life essences of those who had been sacrificed to it.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. Promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go! And now, on with the show.
Okay, folks, we're back, and since they are my picks for this month, I'm going to go ahead and take over control of the bus here. First up in chronological order, we are going to look at 1972's Asylum. This film was rated PG. It comes in at 1 hour and 28 minutes. First released on November 17th, 1972. This one, like I said earlier, is based on short stories by Robert Bloch, the man who wrote Psycho, amongst other things. And the movie is directed by Roy Ward Baker, starring Barbara Parkins, Richard Todd, Sylvia Sims, and some good, classic Amicus cameos, such as Peter Cushing, who appears in both of our films this week. But then again, I think Peter Cushing appears in almost every Amicus anthology. I'm actually surprised Christopher Lee doesn't make an appearance in either of our movies this week.
Yeah, he was in the last one we did where he's just bitch slapping that little girl.
Exactly. Yeah, so our synopsis for Asylum is as follows. In order to secure a job at a mental institution, a young psychiatrist must interview 4 patients inside the asylum. And I feel like this description, which describes the wraparound for this movie, is the strength of this movie. I love this wraparound, the way that they set it up where this new doctor coming to the asylum has to pick out a former doctor from this hospital who kind of lost his mind, his or her mind. So he literally interviews 4 different patients, and each one is a different segment for the anthology. And of course, our doctor has to pick out, our potential doctor. Like I said, this is basically a job interview. And if he picks out the doctor from this hospital that went mad, then he gets the job. But obviously, things don't always go the way we plan. So let's go ahead and bring in Derek first for some general thoughts on Asylum. What did you think of Asylum, specifically the wraparound and the segments that follow?
Oh, I like this, like the whole concept of like interviewing like psych ward patients is kind of a cool concept to do for an anthology series. It's kind of unique in that sense, where you go into a different room and you hear this person's story, how they got in there, pretty much. And that's a cool aspect of the wraparound. And of course, the wraparound then turns into its own story, which I'm not going to spoil yet. We'll get into that more later when another character is introduced later in the movie. But the story. Robert Bloch's one of my favorite authors. Like, I read a lot of these short stories that a lot of these like stories are based on, like in like I said, like short story collections. You could find like the best of Robert Bloch, like anywhere. It's cool stuff, man. You like the aspect of like it starts with a bang with like the Frozen Fear segment, but then it gets very psychological and very psycho-esque with like the third story with Charlotte Rampling and Brett Kecklin's characters in that story, which I won't spoil that outcome. The one I want to see remade the most though is the one with the tailor. Because I want to see like a live action like full version of that with like Christoph Waltz as that Taylor character. Because I'm like thinking, I can see Christoph Waltz. He looks like Christoph Waltz this act. In that aspect, like, I could picture like him being in a remake of this story, which the ending of this story is fucking hilarious. There's a lot of overtones of moving parts in these stories, which I like, in that aspect. And then the whole climax happens, and we get fucking Patrick McGee in a fucking wheelchair again since Clockwork Orange. Like that's cool. And that's, anything that involves like little like puppets and stuff, I dig. And,
yeah.
And we'll get into more aspects of like that story later, because I actually did see another reinterpretation of that earlier today, because one of these stories for this anthology was remade, and I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, Mike, why don't you come on in here? Give me some general thoughts on Asylum.
All right. So for starters, this is a first-time watch for me, and I really liked how the wraparound was kind of worked into the story as like the investigation, as they're trying to figure out who is the liar and who is really insane. And I liked all 3 stories. I thought the antagonist of each one came off crazy, but the whole time the way the story is kind of set up is like you're supposed to think a certain way, like, okay, one of these people, I forgot, was it one of them is supposed to be actually innocent, or one was supposed to be the guilty one? Do I have it reversed on that, when they were trying to figure out like who's the actual person that didn't do it, maybe? But then we get like a twist after that, just to wrap up the movie, and that's one of the most maniacal laughs I've heard in a horror movie in a long ass time.
Oh yeah, that guy should have played the Joker.
Yes.
Yeah, especially on a first time watch. I was not expecting that because you get like the reveal and then the laugh that goes along with it. I was like, holy shit, that is a creepy ass maniacal laugh. But yeah, overall, I liked each story in this. I liked how they wrapped around. I felt it had a very nice fluidity to it. For being an anthology, the wraparound was kind of seamless. Like it almost. A lot of times with anthologies, you have your stories and your wraparound, and even when the wraparound's good, it literally feels like you're stopping the movie for the wraparound. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's noticeable. But I think in a movie like this, it doesn't really feel like they're stopping anything to do the wraparound, because the wraparound is like just as important as the story is once you understand the setup and how it flows through the movie and how it's necessary. Overall, for a first time watch, I dug this a lot, and I want to watch it again because anytime there's a movie with a mystery, you want to rewatch it to pick up things that you might have missed the first time. I love the score. I love everything about this one. This was really good. I enjoyed it.
Especially the opening where you think it's starting out as Fantasia.
Oh, right. Night on Bald Mountain. The song is so good, they open and close the movie with Night on Bald Mountain.
Yep. I didn't know what the name of it was, but it was definitely recognizable. I was like, I've heard this places before.
Oh, yeah. As soon as you hear it, I mean, it's in Natural Born Killers. It's in a slew of other movies. So, yeah.
Yep.
And this is the second Roy Ward Baker movie we actually covered on this show.
Oh, what was the first one?
Quatermass in the Pit.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so for me, Asylum is one that I've been watching for years. This is one that I rented on VHS, probably I want to say like in the mid '80s, and I knew nothing about it when I rented it. All I know was there was a severed head on the cover of the VHS wrapped in paper and rope. So I'm like, oh, this looks mildly interesting. So I checked it out. I remember not ultra liking it. In fact, when I was younger, I just didn't appreciate Amicus movies as much. Like, since they weren't as visceral as like a Friday the 13th movie or something like that, I kind of looked down on them. But as I've gotten older and as I've definitely appreciated stuff like Hammer and Amicus, I see the strengths of these movies, and it's more about atmosphere and tension. It's more about the implied horror more than the actual horror that's happening on screen. So I definitely built an appreciation for this one. But yeah, like I said, I think this is one of the best wraparounds we've ever gotten. As far as how cohesive it is with the individual stories, the way that the final segment kind of, which is something that we're seeing a lot more often today. It's not something that we saw a lot of before, where the final segment of an anthology kind of is connected to the wraparound. But over the last few years, we've gotten movies like The Mortuary Collection and what was the Scare Package. And both Scare Package movies did the same thing, where they incorporate the final segment into the wraparound. So it's something that's become commonplace now, but in 1972 it was definitely not something that we saw very often. And to actually see that final segment with the puppets and how it just connects with the wraparound, this movie is great. This is one this is almost an annual watch for me. This movie is actually available on Tubi. If you guys don't own it, you can watch it for free on Tubi. It's only an hour and 28 minutes long, so it's a quick watch. It's 4 segments. I don't think none of the segments are ultra long. But let's go ahead and, kind of quickly discuss some of the segments. The first one that we get is called Frozen Fear. The basic story of this one is an older gentleman who's married to a woman with money, starts an affair with a younger girl. They plot to kill his wife. Unfortunately, right before he kills his wife, she lets it be known that she was recently gifted a bracelet that's got like amulets on it. And I think they even mentioned like a voodoo priest or something like that, like it came from Africa or something. And the husband, unfortunately, makes the mistake of putting his wife's body away with the bracelet. So when he puts the bracelet on the body, I think that's where we start to get the over-the-top craziness, because after that, the Oh, and I forgot to mention that the husband does basically cut his wife up into pieces. He
And
cuts off her
paper.
head. Yeah, just totally eviscerates her. But then after he puts that bracelet on the pieces, the individual pieces come to life. It's like something out of Return of the Living Dead, where we're seeing like little parts come to life and move on their own. But the fact that all the parts have already been wrapped in butcher paper and tied up with rope just adds this weird sense of dread, like to see a severed leg. Yeah, to see like a severed leg kind of crawl towards you. And then the head was the creepiest part, because the head is still breathing. Like the head is wrapped in paper, but it's still breathing. So you could see the paper going in and out near the mouth area. You could see like the outline of the mouth, and it's still breathing. So it's just creepy as shit. And of course, the inevitable happens. The husband and the mistress, both get taken out. That's to be expected. By the way, did anybody think that the wife was way more attractive than the mistress? Like, again, I'm always questioning guys that cheat in movies, because I always say, if you're gonna cheat up. Like, why would you cheat with someone? And understandably, the mistress is younger, yes. So, obviously she has less wrinkles.
I don't know. In the next movie, somebody's like, I'm just gonna date Donald Pleasance.
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother bit of psychosis that we'll deal with here in a little bit. But yeah, he's married to a beautiful blonde, and she has money. She's the one she's rich. Her family is rich. So literally, why not just stay with her? Now obviously it's an anthology segment. We don't get a lot of backstory. We don't know what their relationship is like. We just get like a very small piece of their life together. But yeah, it didn't make sense to me that some guys just want younger girls. I guess it's not about looks. It's just about the status of dating someone half your age or whatever, I guess. But yeah, whatever. That's a mentality that I don't really get. So yeah, that's
good dick.
I guess so. Like, maybe younger girls are just more promiscuous in bed than, a woman that you've been married to for 10 years. I don't know. But, it just, like I said, as an outside viewer, I question why you're, cheating on your beautiful wife with this average looking girl.
We don't know the situation. She could be a fucking bitch too.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Since we don't spend much time with them, we don't really know the backstory, so I'm not going to hold too much against them, but it's still just on the surface. That's the first thing I noticed.
Yeah.
So that's the first segment, Frozen Fear. And our second segment is The Weird Tailor. This one's an interesting one. Peter Cushing plays a very mysterious man who comes into a tailor shop. And the tailor himself is having really bad times. Like, he's visited by his landlord because he's late with the rent. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the rent. And the landlord basically tells him, you have until the end of the week to get me the rent or I'm kicking you out. Literally, as soon as the landlord leaves, in comes Peter Cushing, offering this guy, 200 pounds, which, in 1972 is a lot of fucking money. Offering him 200 pounds to make this suit. The problem is there are rules involved with the making of this suit. He has to make it out of the materials that Peter Cushing drops off to him, which is apparently it's a very odd material that the tailor actually says, I've never worked with material this hard before. It's not easy to work.
From the land of Hyrule.
There you go. And then other rules, like he can only work on it between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. He cannot work on it before or after that time period. To the point where in one scene, it's 5:05. It's literally 5 minutes past the hour. And he tries to keep working on it, but it's almost like he can't. Like the material itself is preventing him from getting the needle into the material. So it's almost like the material's looking out for him, because Lord knows what happens if he breaks the rules. Luckily, he never really broke the rules. So, nothing really major happens to him, at least, not right away. So eventually the suit is completed. He needs to draw. He agreed to deliver the suit to Peter Cushing. He goes to deliver the suit to Peter Cushing. Unfortunately, Peter Cushing isn't nearly as rich as he let off. the impression that he gave when he first came in was of a dignified, rich Englishman. But then when when the tailor delivers the suit to Peter Cushing's house, we find out he's actually a poor man. He's not rich, and he does not have the $200 to give for the suit. As it turns out, the suit was meant for his son, who is deceased. His son is dead. And this suit was specially made for him. Is it a funeral suit? Is it meant to do something else? We're not 100% sure. But Peter Cushing and the tailor end up getting into a little bit of a pushing fight. The tailor says, I'm not giving you the suit unless you pay me. And he ends up accidentally killing Peter Cushing's character, leaving the house, leaving the son's dead body there, because the son is literally there in Peter Cushing's house. So he returns home with the suit, tells his wife that unfortunately the guy was a scam. I don't have the money, but I still have the suit. I should try to sell it to someone else. And then no. He doesn't want to try to sell it. He wants to destroy it because he steals. After he kills Peter Cushing, he actually steals a book out of Peter Cushing's house that explains how to make the suit and what it's for. And the tailor gets scared. So he literally gives the suit to his wife and tells his wife to destroy it, burn it, whatever you got to do. Just destroy this thing right now.
Other fantasies.
Exactly. She ends up, rather than destroying it, she actually ends up opening the package, looking at the suit and liking it. She likes the way it looks. So she actually puts it on a mannequin that they have there at the tailor shop. Any good tailor shop is going to have a mannequin or two there so that they can do measurements and, their alterations and everything. Well, the mannequin, the wife has lovingly named Otto. She says, he looks like an Otto. It actually looks like Sonny Bono. I thought it looked like Sonny Bono, like a taller Sonny Bono, because Sonny Bono's a short man. But the wife says that she liked the suit so much that she took it out and she puts it on Otto, on the mannequin. The husband walks into the room and sees Otto, the mannequin, wearing the suit and instantly starts freaking out, starts yelling at his wife. What the hell are you doing? You need to destroy that. And the wife is like, I like the way it looks. I think Otto looks nice with it on. Well, right as soon as the wife finishes that line, we see Otto start to move. Yes. As it turns out, the suit grants the wearer life, basically, which is why Peter Cushing had the tailor
and the
make
power of disco.
And the power of disco, because it is a fucking white suit with butterfly collars. I mean, this thing is fucking disco as shit.
It turns into a disco ball at one point where it changes colors.
Going to the British disco.
Yeah. So, like I said, Otto ends up coming to life and unfortunately taking out the tailor and his wife. And that's the end of that segment. Like I said, that one is called The Weird Tailor, which is an odd title because it's not the tailor that's weird. It's Peter Cushing that's weird. But whatever. I'll take it for what
it's weird because he says his wife left with a mannequin.
Yeah, that is true. Funny. All right, so the next segment is called Lucy Comes to Stay, and this is the story of a girl. She's a recovering drug addict. She had an addiction to drugs that she has finally kicked. She was sent to an asylum to kind of, to clean up, if you will. And basically one day she ends up having an argument with her father or somebody in her family. She ends up having an argument. It leaves her on edge, and she ends up finding somewhere in her house, she ends up finding an old bottle of her pills that she used to be addicted to. And of course, because she's dealing with anxiety and she just got into an argument, she ends up taking these pills, these drugs. We're never told what they are. So, they could be methadone, they could be uppers, downers, whatever the hell they are. But basically what happens is as soon as this character takes these pills, a friend of hers appears, and that's Lucy, this beautiful blonde woman who just kind of, it seems like she's, this girl's best friend, that they've been together for a long time. But the way that she talks about how, I haven't seen you in so long, kind of starts to tell the viewer exactly what's happening. The fact that our main character only sees Lucy when she takes these drugs. And then basically the shit hits the fan from there. We basically get scenes with supposedly Lucy killing other members of her family and the segment, in this segment. And obviously, once we get the reveal at the end, as it turns out, there is no Lucy. It's just this girl. What's her name? Barbara. Barbara's her name. It's literally it's basically Fight Club. This segment is Fight Club. Barbara and Lucy are Tyler Durden, basically. They're the same person, but they see each other as two different entities. So like when Barbara is pretending to be Barbara, she sees Lucy, but when she's pretending to be Lucy, she sees Barbara, just like Tyler Durden in Fight Club. So so that one, that one's a pretty simple segment, nothing too crazy. Still some good performances. Lucy is gorgeous. Lucy is the beautiful blonde. You know those 70s English babes that they put in a lot of these horror films.
Yeah, she was a Bond girl, Breck Eklund. Yeah,
that's right. There you go. So yeah, just beautiful, beautiful woman. All right, and then our final segment, which wraps into our wraparound. Our final segment is called Mannequins of Horror, and this is where we see a patient, an older gentleman, who's been at the hospital for a little while, and he's actually created these little, almost like wind-up dolls, puppets, toys, whatever you want to call them, but each of them has like a human face to them, and usually they'll correspond with somebody else that actually exists in the hospital. Like, some of the other patients that we've already spoken to, like there's a puppet of them up on the shelf. The orderly guy, Max, there's a puppet of him up on the shelf. And one puppet that we see is actually of this guy, and this is Patrick McGee, that Derek mentioned earlier. So Patrick McGee plays Dr. Rutherford. He has created these puppets, and he said that he's going to give them life, that as his life force is drained from his human body, it will then go into this puppet. What we end up seeing is that evening, we start seeing the guy laying, Dr. Rutherford laying on the bed, and he's just kind of staring blankly into the sky, into the ceiling. And then finally, his puppet starts to move. We start to realize that Dr. Rutherford on the bed is just frozen. He's not moving at all, but the puppet is. And we actually get to see the little thing moving around. Eventually, it goes to the office of this new doctor, the guy who's interviewing, who's trying to get a job at this mental institution. And when he sees the puppet, basically the big reveal of the segment is when he sees the puppet, he steps on it. And when he pulls his foot away, there's organs coming out of the puppet, literally flesh and blood organs inside of the puppet. And as soon as he does this, Dr. Rutherford dies in his room. And they actually mention how it looks like he's been crushed. It looks like literally someone dropped a boulder on him or something. And like I said, don't forget that the original doctor stepped on his puppet, flattening it. So yeah, that one's barely a segment. It's a quickie. It kind of just wraps everything up. And then we get the final reveal of who the doctor is that he was supposed to be picking out. And as it turns out, it's none of the 4 patients that he just interviewed. As it turns out, it's fucking the orderly Max, who's been kind of walking him around and taking him to all the different patients' rooms. And that's when the movie ends with that maniacal laugh of his that Mike talked about earlier. And I agree with Mike completely. It is an awesome fucking laugh. It definitely is an off-putting laugh that kind of, leaves you a little shook. But yeah, and that's basically Asylum 1972 right there.
Yeah.
What was your favorite segment? Derek first.
Out of the I love Frozen Fear probably the most. That's probably one of my. I like the Frozen Fear is a pretty good fucking starting segment. The aspect of like the body parts moving around and shit. Creepily. That was kind of a cool because actually, that segment I liked. I like the Taylor one. Mm-hmm. I like them all really. Like weirdly enough, like House of the Horror of the Mannequins is like the one that I actually seen a remake of because Mike would probably know because They actually remade that segment for the show Monsters.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember that.
That's an interesting episode of Monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which they kind of explore and do like different things with the dolls in that one. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I like the aspect of it. Plus, fucking, I did kind of like that they had like all the faces. It looked like a little mini Trump, the little robot.
Yeah, one of them did look like Trump. That's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, same thing. Frozen Fear. I love that first segment. Something about anytime you interject voodoo or some kind of mysticism like that into a wrongful death. Obviously we got the husband killing and then chopping up his wife. To actually get to see that, that kind of, killer getting his comeuppance always works for me. And like I said, the image of that severed head in the bag still breathing, that's going to stick with me forever. I fucking love that.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely Frozen Fear. Mike, what about you?
I hate to be boring, but it's the same. Frozen Fear. I loved. To me, that just totally set the table for the movie. I love kind of the body parts moving around. I love
the poster art of the movie.
Yeah, I love the body part that was like in the vent behind the person, and it kind of creeps through it. I love the breathing through the head, still breathing through like it's almost like butcher paper almost, but like whatever they're wrapped up in. I love them slowly crawling across the floor, the body parts after. So I just think it's really well done. It's eerie. This era of horror, like whether it's Hammer horror or whatnot, they have like that great eerie feeling with like what's going on the screen mixed with like the score. And I thought that opening segment really set the table for the movie to be like, okay, this is going to be good. Sometimes all it takes is that really good first segment and you're like fully engaged and like, oh, this is going to be a good time. And I thought that first segment was excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though like all the segments after the first one might be like a half step down as far as entertainment value or creepiness or whatever, I still think this movie is good top to bottom. Like I enjoyed all the segments. I do wish that the mannequin segment was a little bit longer, more fleshed out, but obviously we do get that episode of Monsters, a couple of decades later that, gives us a more fleshed out story for mannequins of horror. So, but yeah, top to bottom, I think Asylum is a solid film. Definitely one of the better Amicus horror anthologies. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our second feature review of the episode. This one is, like, as I mentioned earlier, this is the final anthology film that was released by Amicus. This was released in 1974. And this one is called From Beyond the Grave. This one's coming in at rated PG. It's an hour and 38 minutes. This one has various different writers for the different segments. Robin Clark, Raymond Christodoulou, a couple of other writers are credited. So obviously we have different writers for each of the segments. But then we do get just one director, directed by Kevin Connor. Once again, we get Peter Cushing making an appearance in this one, but we also get some other recognizable names as well. We get Donald Pleasance, we get Leslie Ann Down, we get Angela Pleasance, which, Angela, obviously, Donald Pleasance's daughter, not in as many, big movies as her father. But if you saw the 1983 Christmas Carol starring George C. Scott, she plays the ghost of Christmas Past. And for those who don't know, that is my favorite adaptation of A Christmas Carol, bar none. I absolutely adore George C. Scott. And as I'm watching this movie, as soon as Angela Pleasance comes on screen, I'm like, how do I know that face? I know that face. I can't place it, but I know that face. And then I look up her IMDb and it's like, God damn, she's in one of my favorite Christmas movies ever. And I didn't even recognize her. She does look like herself in A Christmas Carol, but obviously she glows gold and she's got like, her hair is blonde as opposed to like the dirty blonde that we get in this movie. So yeah, I just didn't recognize her right away, but I was so happy to see her because my God, is her face creepy as fuck.
She looks exactly like her.
Oh, but yeah. Well, first of all, as soon as she appears on screen, it's like it's instant. Oh, that's his real daughter. It has to be. before I even knew it was Angela Pleasance in the movie, I'm like, that's got to be his real daughter, because that's literally a female Dr. Loomis. Like, it looks exactly, the eyes, the mouth, the nose, literally almost a carbon copy. So yeah, that was actually great to see. But yeah, this one for me was a first time watch. So, this was the last of the Amicus anthology movies that I hadn't seen yet. So that's why I decided to pick this one, since it was the last one for me to watch. I might as well go ahead and complete my Amicus anthology card. So let's go ahead and bring Mike in first this time. Mike, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on From Beyond the Grave.
Well, for starters, and I think the biggest thing is that it's a cursed object movie, which rules. It made me think, this makes up for all the times we wanted to record Crystal Lake Gift Shop, but we were unable to. It's like watching 3 episodes of it basically, but in this case, a lot more high quality than most episodes of Friday the 13th series, and that's not even to bash that series.
It's kind of like Pawn Shop Chronicles, that movie too.
Yeah, because more or less, for what it's worth, I mostly enjoy and get a kick out of Friday the 13th series, the Cursed Object store. But this one, yeah, it's really well done. I love the kind of variety of customers we get. I love the shopkeeper character, how you kind of figure there's like more to him than meets the eye, but you're not exactly sure what all that entails until the end. And I just love stories surrounding cursed objects, how it's like, okay, you're sold on like what kind of good fortune it could bring you, but there's always a comeuppance, or there's always like a downside to like taking the easy way out of using whatever object to shortcut your way to whatever it is that you want it to be. And then at the end, when unfortunately someone makes a mistake, the guy that was casing the shop the whole time makes the mistake of thinking he's gonna walk in there and rob our guy, and he finds out he kind of becomes a part of a cursed object, I guess you could say. Yeah. By the end of the movie. And yeah, I thought this was this was another one where the wraparound is kind of like seamless, because the wraparound is what sets up, because it's the people literally coming into the shop to get an item that leads to the next story. So it totally makes sense. It makes me wish they like did more anthologies just based off this shop, because it's so cool. Like you could have like the name of I forgot the name of the shop, but you could have like entire anthologies based off of it. Is it okay? Yeah. But yeah, overall, another great movie. First time watch for me as well. Won't be the only time watch. Well, I enjoyed it a ton.
Yeah. Let me come in here this time. This is also, like I've already said a couple of times, a first-time watch for me. This was the last of the Amicus anthologies I needed to watch. And man, I start to realize as I watch these that Amicus really is great with their wraparounds. Like, I remember thinking that the original Tales from the Crypt wraparound was just okay, but it just seems like they've gotten better and better as they go along, as they went through Vaults of Horror and, some of the other anthologies that they've put out. I love their wraparounds. Like I said, Asylum is potentially my favorite wraparound story for an Amicus anthology, but this is awesome. And I love how all the victims, if you will, of the segments of this story, the segments of this movie are all people that tried to rip off Peter Cushing. And I like the fact that the one person that didn't rip off Peter Cushing actually gets to survive his segment. So I thought, see, there's a moral to the story here. Don't try to rip off old shopkeepers, because it's going to come back to bite you. So I thought that was really cool. It also makes it look like rich white Englishmen are just jerks. Like, they're cheap and they're just jerks. They'll rip off their own mother for $1. Literally $1 or £1, I should say. Because in one of the segments, or one of the setups for one of the segments, we see the titular, or we see the person switching the price on a couple of snuff boxes. One snuff box that he wants is $40, and then another smaller one is $5. So he actually switches out the price tags. And then even when Peter Cushing, as the shopkeeper, tells him, "Oh, this will cost you £5," the guy's like, "Oh, will you take 4?" It's like, you already ripped them off for £35, and now you're still trying to fucking get them for another pound. Like, what a fucking skinflint. But yeah, I feel like as this movie is ending, I'm like, well, the moral of this story is rich white men or rich white Englishmen are assholes and won't pay for anything that they actually want to get their hands on. So, but yeah, I did like that basic kind of premise of these guys coming in, trying to rip off Peter Cushing. And the funny thing is Peter Cushing knows every time. Like, when he first looked at that snuff box and saw the $5 price tag, he made a face. Yeah. He's like, what the fuck? This isn't $5. This is $40. But he allows it anyway, because it's like, well, fuck it. This guy's going to get his comeuppance, so I don't care. Here you go. So, yeah, that aspect of the wraparound I really like. I don't know that the individual stories in this one are as strong as the ones in Asylum, but we still do get some pretty interesting stories. Some of them are fairly basic, like the one with the mirror with David Warner. I mean, who didn't see that ending coming, you know? It's a good segment. Don't get me wrong, all the segments are good, but you know, when you're watching them in 2024 for the first time, you kind of see the endings coming. The elemental story, like, who didn't know how that was going to end? I mean, there's literally only 2 characters in that whole segment, so it has to end the way that it ended. But yeah, despite all that, you know, looking at this from, you know, the fact that it came out in 1974, it really makes you appreciate how original, how clever Amicus was with, you know, setting up their stories, setting up their wraparounds. Just all of it worked really well. So yeah, I had a really good time with this one. Like I said, even though some of the stories here aren't as strong as what we get in Asylum, there's still some. I love the segment with Donald Pleasance, like, you know, with the Pleasance, you know, with both Donald and Angela in there. I love that segment. I did not see that twist coming. I just didn't give a 1974 movie credit for having that kind of twist. It's a twist that we've seen before. We've seen it in multiple movies since then, but like I said, just for the fact that this was a 74 film, I didn't anticipate that they would go there with that segment, but they did, and I'm happy they did, because, you know, like I said, I like to be surprised. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, I appreciate it. So let's go ahead and bring in Derek. Derek, give me some general thoughts on From Beyond the Grave.
From Beyond the Grave is a movie that I have owned in my collection for years. Weirdly enough, I actually own this movie on both DVD and Blu-ray. And this is the first time I'm watching it, was today. Wow. Well, because I had it in like that box set that Warner Brothers released back in the day. The Twisted Terror collection that comes with like Dr. Giggles and fucking The Hand with Michael Caine. So I own it on DVD for that. Yeah, Deadly Friends part of that box set too. You know. Weird collection if you think about it, and then because it has this movie on there too. But anyways, that's another rant. And then I watched the Blu-ray today. Man, I gotta give a big ups for the director of this movie, Kevin Conner, who usually directed a lot of like Amicus's non-horror stuff. He did like more of the action adventure Doug McClure pictures, like the Lambda Time Forgot and like At the Earth's Core, like the ones based off like Edgar Rice Burroughs novels, which are fun. I love like those movies we could do on our other show because they're more like they have monsters and shit in them, you know, like shit like that. And you know, I love those movies. And this one's just fun, you know. The segments are better written in the first one that we did, but I still had fun. Like even like the ones that they did flow well, you know, like throughout the story. And I like the aspect of it. It's more like a movie like Pawn Shop Chronicles, which was kind of like a grindhouse like anthology movie that took place with like all these people that shopped at like this pawn shop that was owned by Vincent D'Onofrio. And it was kind of like that aspect which kind of kept me interested in. And plus, I love the door segment. The one that involved the door was so cool looking.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
And yeah, and they had that movie House That Dripped Blood that had no blood in it. I'm like, there's a lot of blood in this one though. Yes, there is.
At the end of the segment when she just busts down the door when she walks through it.
Yeah, it's fun. And yeah, the fucking that crazy psychic lady from that one segment with the elemental.
Madame Orloff.
Yo, that's legitimately like the psychic from Witchboard's grandmother.
Nice. It's funny because when we first see Madame Orloff, man, I thought she was too quirky for her own good. Like I'm thinking you're doing yourself a disservice because you look like a charlatan. And when she started the ritual in that segment, I'm like, if I were a non-believer, I would be kicking her out of my house right now because she's just being ridiculous. But as it turns out,
and shit, I'm like, yeah.
All right, so let's real briefly talk about the segments here in this one. We've already talked about the wraparound. Obviously, Peter Cushing is an elderly shopkeeper, and
amazing
whether these items are cursed or whether he's allowing them to fuck up the lives of the people who buy them based on the interaction that he has with them. Because like I said, of the 4 segments, 3 of the guys rip him off or try to rip him off, and they don't survive their segments. But then the one guy, and that's the door segment, the one guy that doesn't try to rip off Peter Cushing actually survives his segment with his beautiful wife. Like they both survive. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. But yeah, the segments. So the first segment in the film, after we get the introduction of the wraparound, is called The Gatecrasher. And this one stars David Warner. We all love David Warner, potentially our second favorite character actor next to Dick Murdoch. Dick Miller. Dick Miller is my favorite character actor ever. Absolutely love him. Cameron Mitchell is up there too. But yeah, David Warner is probably a solid number 2 for me. I love it. Anytime you see David Warner, you're getting a good performance out of him.
Singer of the Ooze. Fuck yeah.
And this movie is only a couple of years before The Omen, his appearance in the original Omen, which is a stellar performance as well. So yeah,
he just went on to be a bad guy in the 80s. Exactly. Time Bandits and Drawn.
So in this segment, David Warner sees a mirror in the shop that he wants to buy. The shopkeeper lets him know that it's a very old mirror, over 400 years old, and that he wants 250 pounds for it. That's what he's selling it for. David Warner, being the shyster that he is, convinces him that it's a fake, basically telling him, no, look at the glass. It's been tempered. If that's tempered glass, then this thing can't be 400 years old. It had to have been made like in the last 50 to 100 years or whatever. So he literally drops the price down from 250 pounds to 25 pounds. And basically sells it to David Warner for 25 pounds, knowing that it's not a fake, that it's really worth what he thinks it's worth. After David Warner's character gets the item back home, he tells the story to one of his guests about how he ripped off this old guy, lying to him and saying that it was a fake. And one of the people at his house makes the comment that it looks like something that would be in a psychic's room, and somebody else in the party has the suggestion of let's do a seance, because that, of course, what else would you do at a party?
Yeah, talk to me.
Yeah, exactly. So they have a seance, and unfortunately, during the seance, it seems to attract someone who is trapped inside the mirror. So during the seance, we actually see this older gentleman kind of appear in the mirror. David Warner notices this and lets out a scream, which of course ends the seance. And, at that point, everybody's freaked out, so they all go home. Once David Warner is home alone, the entity in the mirror appears again, makes himself known, and he tells David Warner that he needs to be fed. He says, "Feed me." I literally feed me. It's very fucking Little Shop of Horrors.
It's it's fucking crazy because it's Oculus, Talk to Me, and Little Shop of Horrors in all the same segment.
Holy shit! Yeah, you're right. I can't argue with that. That's absolutely accurate. Yeah. So David Warner decides that he's going to go ahead and help this entity out by feeding it. And what does this thing feed on?
Hookers.
Blood. Well, indirectly hookers, yes, but blood specifically. So David Warner literally, the first victim he gets is a prostitute. He goes and gets a streetwalker, takes her back to his place, and then he stabs her. And every time he kills someone, we see the entity in the mirror get less and less grotesque looking. Like when we first see him, his skin is all gray. He's got like holes in his cheeks. Like it looks like he's partially rotted. But then every time Warner kills somebody, the entity in the mirror, like I said, looks a little bit younger, a little bit more healed. My biggest issue with this segment is why David Warner didn't clean up after he killed someone. Like, after he killed the first prostitute, he doesn't clean up. He literally just leaves her body on the floor. There's blood everywhere. It's like he's not even trying to hide what he's doing. Eventually, he kills a few more people, another woman, another couple of women, actually. And we eventually see that the apartment is just wrecked. Like, everything in the apartment is there's blood everywhere.
He's
blood
covered in blood.
He even has blood on him, and he's not even trying to hide it. Like, he doesn't change his shirt. He doesn't wash his hands. It's like he doesn't care. And then what ends up happening is eventually the downstairs neighbor, the person that lives below him, starts getting blood dripping into his house. David Warner has spilled so much blood in his apartment that it's leaking into the apartment below him.
The house that
we end up finding out that he's been hiding the bodies under the floorboards of his apartment, which seems fucking idiotic, because do you not know how physics works? Do you not know that gravity is going to pull the blood down? And it makes no sense to me. Again, it's an anthology segment, so I'll allow it. They can't give us too much backstory. Like I said, eventually the downstairs neighbor comes upstairs, knocks on his door to complain about blood dripping into his apartment. Now the neighbor character is really weird because he literally he sees blood, and it's very obviously blood. It's thick and it's red. It's not like it's Kool-Aid or something like that leaking down. He sees blood leaking from David Warner's apartment. Then he goes and knocks on David Warner's door. And when he opens the door, Warner is covered in blood himself. He's got blood all over his shirt. But the neighbor doesn't even make mention of it. He just says, "Oh, man, you look terrible," blah, blah, blah. And then he starts talking about, be careful with what you're doing because I'm getting blood dripping in my apartment. But he says it so nonchalantly. He says it like he's living above a butcher shop or something. Like he's not even questioning why David Warner is covered in blood. Eventually, the neighbor just walks into Warner's apartment unannounced, sees the state of the place, how it's all wrecked, how Warner is covered in blood, and he tries to turn around and leave. Unfortunately, David Warner stabs him in the back, killing him, and that turns out to be the final victim that the entity in the mirror needs to be able to become flesh. So what we finally see is the guy in the mirror is now in the real world. He's in David Warner's apartment with him, and he looks young. He's completely healed. All the scarification on his face is gone. His hair is, nicely brushed. Like he looks like a normal person. And then he basically, I don't know if he like hypnotizes or mind controls David Warner, but basically has David Warner literally walk into his knife. He's holding a dagger out, and he literally tells Warner, "Put your hands on my shoulders. Now lunge forward." And this is while the guy is holding a knife straight out in front of him. So it's almost like he didn't want to actually kill David Warner himself. He just wanted David Warner gone. So after Warner walks into the knife and falls to the ground, the entity leaves the apartment. He's free to leave. He is completely flesh and blood now. He's gone. And then what we see is we see the mirror change ownership. Like, we actually see a montage where we see multiple different people who own the mirror or that live in that apartment. So they must have left the mirror in the apartment after they cleaned up David Warner's mess, so that every time a new family moved in, the mirror was there. And we actually get to see the montage from the POV of the mirror. And then eventually the same thing happens. Somebody says, oh, that mirror looks like it belongs in a psychic's, room. And then again, someone says, oh, let's do a seance. And I'm sure we all know where it's going from here. They
Talk to me.
The seance. And instead of that older gentleman showing up in the mirror, it's David Warner. He is now trapped in the mirror, and he now looks decrepit, with scars on his face, like he's rotting away. So I guess, the cycle continues, if you will. This is actually the longest segment in the movie. It's actually 28 minutes long. This entire movie is an hour and 38 minutes, and the first segment is 28 minutes long. So it's definitely a long one. And like I said, that segment is called The Gatecrasher. Off to our second segment of the movie. This is the one with Donald Pleasance and Angela Pleasance. This one is called An Act of Kindness. Our main character of this segment is he's one of those guys who kind of lies to be able to be a part of a conversation. Like, he'll hear people talking about something, and then he'll lie, making it seem like he has information or knowledge that he can share. But it's just that he's a lonely guy. He's married to a woman who doesn't give a shit about him, a kid who doesn't respect him, and basically he finds any excuse he can to not come home after work because the wife, it's literally a cartoon segment. The wife is constantly berating him for not being more successful, even though he's a fucking office manager who wears a suit and tie to work every day, but somehow he's not successful enough for her. So, she complains basically. So one day he ends up meeting Donald Pleasance, and Donald Pleasance basically he's one of those like guys on the street that sells like matches and like cigarettes, like he's a poor guy who's basically just trying to make some money. The guy introduces our main character of the segment, whose name I completely forgot. Who's the main? It's not Emily. I can't remember the name. Oh, Steven. It's Steven. So Steven is the main character of this segment. When he meets Donald Pleasance's character, Donald Pleasance introduces himself as a former military man. So this guy, Steven, lies and says, oh, I'm also military. And then he goes, and then that's when he goes to the shop that Peter Cushing is running, and he steals a Medal of Honor, some kind of medal, some kind of like decoration, a military decoration.
Yeah.
And he basically steals it because Peter Cushing basically says, oh, I can't sell this to you unless you actually won this award. So if you have documentation that proves that you won it, I'll sell it to you. Obviously, the guy, Steven, doesn't have any documentation because he was never in the military. So he ends up just stealing it from Peter Cushing. Right after stealing it, he shows it to Donald Pleasance, basically saying, see, I was in the military. I have this medal. And that starts a relationship between the two where Donald Pleasance eventually invites the guy, Steven, over to his house. When he goes over to his house, finally, after a couple of invitations, he meets his daughter. His daughter's name is Emily, and she is, of course, played by Angela Pleasance, fucking carbon copy of Donald Pleasance. I mean, they look so much alike, it's uncanny. And she is basically this very accommodating girl. She cooks dinner for the guy, for Steven. She just does whatever she can to make him comfortable while he's there. Obviously, he doesn't want to go home. His wife just upsets him constantly, blah, blah, blah. So what ends up happening is he ends up having an affair with Emily. They end up sleeping together. And then Emily basically tells him that I am yours and I am yours to order. You just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. Now, obviously, most guys' minds is going to turn into sexual stuff. It's like, oh, really? You're going to do anything I tell you to? Okay. But obviously, Steven's a little standoffish. You know, he's your normal wishy-washy Englishman who, you know, feels weird about giving a woman an order. But eventually, it's implied that Emily can dispatch his wife for him. You know, she tells him, you know, your wife doesn't love you, she doesn't respect you, and that's never going to change. You know, she's going to grow old just disrespecting you and hating you and everything else. And she says, I could take care of her for you. Would you like me to do that? The guy, obviously, Steven, he's a little freaked out. He doesn't, you know, obviously he doesn't think she's telling the truth. But then eventually she pulls out a voodoo doll. And the doll actually is carved to look like his wife. And she literally says, I could do it right now. Just give me the order. And Steven basically says, well, if you want to. And Emily's like, no. It's not what I want. It's what you want. You have to tell me what you want. So eventually the guy says, okay, go ahead. Emily ends up stabbing the doll, and blood comes out of it. Like red visceral blood actually comes out of the voodoo doll. Steven sees this and he freaks out, and he's like, well, you couldn't have killed my wife by doing that. And Emily just says, well, why don't you go home and find out? So Steven ends up running home, and he finds his wife dead on the floor, and he finds his wife he finds his son at the top of the stairs, like in the fetal position, because I guess he was there when mom just keeled over and died. We end up getting a quick funeral, and literally it goes right from there to the wedding. It literally, we see the guy, Steven, marrying Emily, and it's after the wedding. They're at Steven's house. The only people there are Donald Pleasance, Emily, his son, and Steven. You know, Steven and his son. So it's just those four. And they're talking about how happy they are and everything else. And basically, Emily looks at Steven and says, would you like me to cut the cake? And again, Steven's like, well, if you want to. And again, she corrects him. She's like, no, it's not what I want. It's what you want. And he goes, okay, go ahead and cut the cake. Instead of cutting the cake, she cuts the little bride, the groom, like figurine that's on the cake topper. She ends up stabbing the head of the groom cake topper, and blood comes out of the cake topper. And then camera pans up to show Steven, and he's got blood coming out of his head, and he keels over dead right there. Now, as soon as that happens, I'm like, why is the kid not freaking out? Like, the kid is just standing there very calm. He's already watched his mother die, and now he just watched his father keel over.
He's in on it.
And then that's when Emily and Donald look at the son and say, see, we always keep our promises. We told you we would help you get rid of them. So, yeah.
Because there's a little hint early in the segment where he's like, I know a guy that sells that near my school.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. He does mention that he knows, the Donald Pleasance as the match salesman, if you will. So, yeah, like I said, in 2024, it's not the most original ending, but for something that came out in 74, it got me. I didn't see this coming. I legitimately thought that Emily wanted to marry Steven, and so she took out the wife. But no, they were just doing a favor for the son, because the son actually wanted both of his parents gone because of their constant arguing and their constant ignoring of him. Like, they don't really engage with the son very much. So there you go. That is the second segment, An Act of Kindness. The third segment is kind of a quickie. This one is called The Elemental. This is, we basically see the main character of The Elemental, Reginald. His name is Reggie. Basically, he's the guy that I mentioned earlier with the snuff boxes, where he swaps the price on the snuff boxes. So he ends up getting a 40-pound snuff box for £4 after switching the price and then still undercutting the guy on the incorrect price. He ends up taking the train home from the shop, and while on the train, he meets Madame Orloff. She is a psychic, and she tells Reginald that he has an elemental on his shoulder. And he's like, what? I don't see anything. And she's like, really? Haven't you felt anything lately? Haven't you felt like a heaviness on your shoulders or like a pain or something? And he just kind of brushes it off, doesn't really, take too much stock into it. But she does give him a business card and tells him, if you ever need any services, call me. And then she says, oh, and Thursdays are half price. I'm like, really? If I'm possessed by a demon, if I wait till Thursday, I'll get the exorcism for half price? That's awesome. I thought that was funny. Half price on Thursdays. So anyway, he ends up going home that night. He has dinner with his wife, and what ends up happening is his wife starts getting attacked by an invisible force. Basically, she accuses the husband of doing it. Like at first, when he first comes home, he makes his wife a drink. Something hits her on the shoulder, and she accuses her husband of doing it. But Reginald wasn't standing anywhere near her, so it definitely couldn't have been him. And he starts to kind of wonder, well, what the hell was that about? But he brushes it off. Then that night in bed, the wife starts to tell her husband, stop holding my hand so tight. It hurts. But we see that the husband is literally facing away from the wife and both his hands are in sight. So something is squeezing the wife's hand. Then suddenly the wife starts choking. She starts grabbing at her throat and she starts hitting her husband, who doesn't really know what's going on. Like, he finally turns over and sees his wife struggling to breathe. Excuse me. And then she kind of snaps out of it. But when the attack ends, she still thinks that it was her husband. She's like, why would you try to strangle me? What the fuck is wrong with you? And of course, the husband has no idea what she's talking about. But then he remembers what Madame Orloff said on the train, that elemental is going to suck your life dry, and it's going to get stronger and stronger as the time goes by. So after remembering this, and after the incident with his wife getting choked, he decides to call Mrs. Orloff. She ends up coming over, and literally within like a minute of walking in the front door, she starts an exorcism. She starts a ritual to try to get rid of the elemental. Unfortunately, we never get to see the elemental in this segment. Like, I feel like if they would have given us an image of the creature, I might have liked this segment a little bit more. But otherwise, it's more of an implied horror in this one. So she ends up trying to perform an exorcism. While she's performing it, the house is getting destroyed. Plates are getting thrown from the shelves. Framed pictures are getting pulled off the shelves. Electronics are exploding. There's sparks everywhere. And it's rising to a crescendo. Like, literally everything in the room is moving. The wife is sitting right there, so she's freaking out. So obviously she's starting to finally believe that her husband wasn't the one attacking her and that there was something attached to him. Finally, Madame Orloff ends the exorcism and the house calms down. And for a couple of days go by and there's no more instances, there's no more hauntings, there's no more attacks. But what ends up happening is one day, the wife basically turns on her husband and ends up stabbing him with a knife and killing him. And we see her talk in a doubled demonic voice, a very familiar voice that we hear for people that are possessed by demons. And she ends up walking out of the house, but she ends up smashing the front door right off the hinges. Like, she's fucking powerful now. And I forget what cryptic thing she said as the demon, like, I'm finally free or something like that, something along those lines. And that's pretty much the end of that segment. So that's the segment that I was saying, what other ending could there possibly be? The demon or the elemental leaves the husband, goes into the wife, takes her over, and then kills him. I mean, it's the only logical ending for a segment with only two characters. I guess Madame Orloff's a character too, but I wouldn't anticipate her getting possessed or anything.
Well, she didn't get paid either way, so. And
she never did get paid because he was going to pay her by check later. So yeah, she never got her 50 pounds for the exorcism. That sucks. Oh well. So like I said, that's the end of our third segment, the elemental, and then so starts our final segment, and this one is called The Door. Now, Michael is the main character of The Door. This is the guy that does not rip off the shopkeeper. He actually walks in and he sees a door. He's got like just a door leaning up against the wall. And the door, it's got this beautiful ornate decorations. It's got a very evil demonic face right in the middle of it, like kind of carved into the door.
It's very labyrinth.
Yes, very labyrinth, exactly. He ends up basically the price of the door is £50, but he tells the shopkeeper, "I'm sorry, I only have £40 on me. Is that okay?" The shopkeeper ends up saying, "Okay, I'll take the 40." And then when he counts it out, it's actually 40. Like the guy didn't rip off the shopkeeper, which, like I said, is probably why he survives his segment. He ends up taking the door home and he puts it on like a closet that they're using for stationery. They call it their stationery closet. It's just paper and pens and shit like that. Because it's basically an art room. Like the wife is an artist. So, it's basically art supplies. One night, though, when the husband opens the door, it's not the stationery closet. It's another room. It's an ancient room. There's cobwebs everywhere. And it actually fits the description of the room that the shopkeeper told him was attached to the door before. Like Michael asks the shopkeeper, "What did this door lead to before?" And, the shopkeeper tells him, "Oh, a room that was all blue, a completely blue room." Later in the same segment, the wife talks about a dream that she had about a blue room behind that door. And she describes it with even more detail, talking about it's a drawing room with double windows and everything is blue, blah, blah, blah. And like I said, that night when he opens the door, that's exactly what he finds. The first night that he's there, he looks around a little bit, but then suddenly he starts to hear someone walking towards the room from another door, a different door in the room. He gets freaked out, so he runs out of the room and closes the crazy door behind him. And then he goes and opens it again, and it's back to the stationery closet. It's not the blue room anymore. So he tells his wife about it. His wife isn't really convinced. She thinks that he's just hallucinating or whatever. But then on the second night, the door opens by itself. And when Michael looks, it's the blue room again. And it's the blue room inside, on the other side of the door. This time he walks into the room and he actually waits for the person. Once again, he hears another door on the opposite side of the room opening, but this time he waits. And what we get is a very old, like 1700s European dressed man, almost like a count or something. And he's talking about how he purposely made this door to trap people that have not been born yet. So basically, he created the door knowing that anybody who buys the door and then attaches it to a hinge on their house, it's going to lead to this room, and then he can collect them as his victims. So, he's been doing this for centuries, it seems like, at this point, where, he just keeps taking people. Once he realizes that Michael actually has a wife, the entity is more interested in the wife. Like he's not as interested in Michael anymore. So one night the door opens and the entity ends up coming out for the first time. Actually comes out of the blue room into Michael's house and actually kidnaps the wife. Literally takes the wife and carries her into the room. Luckily, just as the entity is carrying the wife into the blue room, Michael notices it and gives chase and chases the guy into the room. Now, this is where Michael is actually a smart guy, because I would not have thought of this. Michael grabs an axe from the floor, and I'm figuring, okay, he's going to attack the guy, the entity. And it's probably not going to have much effect because this guy's like hundreds of years old, so it's probably not going to do anything. But instead, he attacks the door, which
it's a Horcrux.
Was brilliant, because I wouldn't have thought of that. In the moment, I probably would have attacked the guy with the axe also. But Michael decides to attack the door with the axe, and every time he hits the door with the axe, blood comes out of the wound, and it affects the guy. It affects the entity in the room, to the point where eventually the wife grabs the axe and starts axing the face in the door, and that's when we see the face of this guy start to like fall apart and have like wounds and blood and everything else come out.
Awesome.
Eventually they just eventually they destroy the door completely. The ceiling collapses inside of the blue room, but Michael and his wife are able to get out, and that's the end of that segment. So yeah, we finally somewhat of a happy ending for one of these segments. And like I said, it's nice that it's the one guy that didn't rip off the shopkeeper. So obviously there's a moral to this whole movie. Don't rip off shopkeepers. So then, after our final segment, like I said, which was called The Door. And by the way, the wife in this segment was played by Leslie Ann Down. So if you're familiar with Leslie Ann Down and how absolutely beautiful she was in the 70s, then you know what we're looking at in this segment.
Oh yeah.
So then we get after the final complete segment, we get the end of the movie, which the end of the wraparound, which is we see a thief or a thug, if you will, go into the shop, and we actually have seen him multiple times throughout the movie, because it seems like every time he's about to walk into the shop to try to rob the old guy, another one of our segment victims like interrupts him and walks into the store instead. But finally the thug is able to get into the store. And he doesn't like try to rob him right away. He trying to makes it seem like he's a customer, but at the same time, the shopkeeper has these two handguns, like old time, like colonial handguns in his hands. And he's basically like cleaning them or whatever. And he's like, he shows them to the thief. And he's like, oh, do you like these guns? Are you interested in these? And the thug is like, yeah, I like those. And then Peter Cushing tells him, well, be careful, because one of them is loaded and one of them is not. And I don't quite remember which one is the one that's loaded. So just be careful. Of course, as soon as the thug gets the guns in his hands, he basically tries to stick up the shopkeeper. But the shopkeeper doesn't even flinch. In fact, he starts walking towards the thief with the guns in his hand.
Yeah, he's like RoboCop.
Yeah, he basically does like a Jason Voorhees, just slowly walks towards him. Eventually, the thug does fire both guns. They have no effect whatsoever. It's almost like the guns had blanks, or the more obvious answer is that the shopkeeper is probably supernatural in some way. At this point, I start to think that this is like the Needful Things prequel. Do you guys remember Needful Things?
Yeah, it's either that or the other answer I have is he's kind of playing the same character he is in Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, where he's kind of like an entity of death.
I could go with that. Yeah, just a different interpretation of it. Absolutely.
Which makes sense because he kind of looks like Dr. Terror with the eyebrows and shit.
That's true. Those big bushy caterpillar-like eyebrows that he has in this movie. Way bigger than the eyebrows he had in Asylum, that's for sure. But
yes.
Yeah. Eventually the thief ends up falling in a trunk, I think. Is that correct? I think he falls into like a trunk, and then the shopkeeper closes the trunk, and then a customer walks in right after him and says, oh, I like this trunk. And he kind of starts to show it to him, and our movie fades to black from there. And that is From Beyond the Grave, 1974. So once again, as we did with the last movie, I will ask my cohorts, what was your favorite segment in this movie? Derek, why don't you go ahead and tell me what your favorite segment was?
It's definitely the door one, because I love like the aspect of like the door itself as like a cursed object. It's kind of a cool aspect of a cursed object story that, we've seen in a bunch of movies, but it's kind of cool to how this one incorporates like a door instead of like a mirror or something or a lamp, and maybe L4, but and like the blue U aesthetic to the actual room itself added to it. Very Euro horror feel to that segment. Very like the way it was shot felt kind of Italian based in that sense.
Yeah.
But but other than that, like that one was my favorite, but also coming up is the Donald Pleasant segment. That was probably my second favorite, if I was going to be honest.
That's my favorite. I love this segment. Like I said, for the mere fact that I didn't see that ending coming. Even though it's not the most original ending, we've seen it in multiple movies before, the double cross. But just because I wasn't expecting it in this movie, it just took me by surprise, and I really enjoyed it. And it just made me look back at the rest of the segment, just with just kind of like with more rose-colored glasses, because of how much I love the twist at the end. It made the rest of this segment that much better. So yeah, for me, it's definitely an act of kindness. I had a really good time with that one. So Mike, last one. What was your favorite segment in From Beyond the Grave?
I don't know if I'm going with the cheap choice here, because it's kind of like the one that you would probably say is the most familiar, maybe the one that people are accustomed to, but I really like the Cursed Mirror one. Like,
nice.
It's probably like, I think when you were giving the walkthrough for it, you kind of set up front, like, people watching it through like a 2024 lens. You obviously seen stuff like this since, so there's probably not a lot of mystery and intrigue to it, but I liked the effect. I liked the fact that the story kind of wrapped around in the predictable way of like, oh, the person who was helping ends up like the new kind of cursed person in the mirror, but I still just liked it. I like the look of it, and I don't know. It just really worked for me. I mean, the whole movie I think worked. Yeah. So don't get me wrong, but it's another case of like it's starting off with a banger. I just really I like that classic kind of feel to it.
Yeah, there's definitely no wrong answer.
That was cool.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for our feature reviews, folks. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Mike to end our show for the second time.
Yeah, I think after this I'm gonna Google like a list of all the Amicus, because I've seen some, and now I've seen 2 more, but I'm pretty sure you said there was about 8 or 9 of them. You think?
Yes.
Yeah,
I know for a fact I haven't
Dr.
seen
Terror is the first one.
Yep.
And Torture Garden, which is pretty great. Tales from the Crypts, Vault of Horror, House of Drip Blood.
Seen that one. And Tales from the Crypt, I saw that not even knowing it was part of it, like, when I was a kid.
Oh yeah. I think that's probably the one that most people have seen, just because it eventually got a TV show. So I think a lot of younger audiences kind of went back and sought it out.
Yeah. Plus it was in like all those old like blockbuster clip like documentaries, like the Santa Claus segment, that was big.
Classic. Joan Collins.
Yeah, I remember maybe not so much Venom, because you were probably well into your horror fandom before like I discovered it, but I remember it being a revelation that like, wait a minute, this Tales from the Crypt show I'm watching on HBO isn't like the first Tales from the Crypt. And then because I think I was like 9 or 10 when the HBO series first started, so and back then we didn't have the same resources. Just
if I can Ralph Richardson as the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I pretty much liked every Amicus movie that I've seen, so there's no reason for me to stop tracking them down now.
Yeah, they're all varying degrees of good to great. Like my least favorite it might be Vaults of Horror. I think Vaults of Horror is probably my least favorite, but even that one has some decent segments. The vampire segment in that one is really good. The one with the artist and the painting, I like that one a lot. So even though that one as a complete package is probably, at least in my opinion, the weakest of the Amicus anthologies, they're all worth watching. Absolutely.
Yeah, Dr. Terror is still my favorite. I love like the whole aesthetic of them on the train.
Yeah.
And the fucking reveal at the end fucking seals the deal.
Nice. I honestly, I couldn't put my finger on what my favorite one is. Obviously, Tales from the Crypt is the one that I've seen the most, so it's the one I'm the most familiar with. But I always have a good time with Asylum. I always have a good time with Dr. Terror. I always have a good time with Torture Garden. House That Dripped Blood is one that doesn't do as much for me, but again, still very enjoyable and worth seeing.
And we get to enjoy From the Beyond the Grave now. That was a banger.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, for a first time. I mean, I can't believe it took me this long to finally see every Amicus anthology, but yeah.
Yeah, we should do that. He did that movie with the two samurai ghosts that like possess like Americans that live in the house. With
Nice.
The House of Laughing Windows or something like that. House of Whispering Windows or something.
Sounds
it was
familiar,
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Nice. All right, Mike, close us out.
Yeah. Looking at our recording window, I'm happy to say that the entire show recorded as planned this time. So no third time's a charm. Second time was the charm.
Imagine.
This episode.
No.
But yeah, that's gonna do it for our discussion on the movies and No More Room in Hell number 62. But before we get out of here, the last thing we like to do is let people know where else they can hear us. So
No More Room in Hell. That's it.
Yes. No More Room in Hell channel on YouTube pretty much has everything, but what does that include, Venom?
Well, I do have a new episode of Creature Comforts available, starring our own Mr. Derek B, along with myself and Donna Nelly. It is episode 30, where we looked at Dwayne Johnson's Rampage. Yes, a very interesting movie. A fun time was had by all, absolutely. And that is available right now as we speak. It dropped, I believe it dropped today or tomorrow morning, one of those. So look out for that one. Like I said, that's episode 30. Episode 31 is already in the planning stages. We're going to be looking at Prophecy. It's actually going to be a first-time watch for me. Prophecy is a movie that I've heard about for a long time. The mutant bear.
Directed by John Frankenheimer.
Yeah, I just never got around to watching it. So I figured let's take the opportunity in,
Mike,
October.
have you seen it?
No, I have not actually.
Yeah, I've heard great things, and I've seen clips, and the bear looks awesome. So I'm excited to see it. So anytime I can pick a movie that I've never seen for a Creature Comforts or any show that I'm on, I always take the opportunity. It's always worth it, just to add to your numbers more than anything. But yeah, so episode 30 is available now. Episode 31 will be out sometime in October. I'll make sure to have it out before Halloween. And let's see, I think that's all we have. We mentioned the Crystal Lake gift shop earlier. Unfortunately, we haven't done an episode in a little bit just for scheduling conflict reasons, but hopefully sooner than later we'll have another episode of that out. Obviously, Fresh Cuts, our weekly show where we look at the newest releases in the horror genre. We actually did 2 episodes last week, which is not something that we do often, but because we actually had 2 solid horror releases in cinemas last week, we went ahead and did an episode for the new Halle Berry movie, Never Let Go. And then we did a second episode for the new Demi Moore film, The Substance, which was an interesting film. And it was an interesting episode, too. I think Don and I said some things that I think most people wouldn't expect, because The Substance is getting pretty much universal praise. Like, I've yet to see anybody say anything negative about the movie.
I could tell from the trailers that Don was not going to like this movie.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we go over in the episode the issues that we had with it. None of us thought it was a bad movie. It's just, I don't think it's nearly the phenomenon that people are making it out to be. But it's still worth seeing and worth seeing in theaters. It has great sound design, beautiful cinematography. So it's still worth checking out.
I'll wait till it's on Vudu.
There you go. Well, either way. So 2 episodes of Fresh Cuts last week. We got an episode of Fresh Cuts recording tomorrow. But like I said, we do an episode every single week. So you can always look forward to a new horror review from us on Fresh Cuts. And I think that's all I have. I have a guest spot coming up on Cuts of the Chase where I'm going to be talking about Haunt, the Halloween horror movie from a couple of years ago. And then I also have an appearance scheduled for for the Podcast Under the Stairs horror head-to-head series, where I will be looking at Joe Dante's The Howling and Alex de la Iglesias' Dance with the Devil. So, but no dates yet for when those will get recorded. But as soon as those are available, obviously I will let you know. And that's it for me.
Anything new from you, Derek?
No, but the Howling and Dance with the Devil, that's like a fucking double feature and a half right there.
Hell yeah. Oh, I'm excited.
Coked out Javier
Bardem. I mean, Alex de la Iglesia is a director that I've been following for years. His movie Day of the Beast is literally a top 3 Christmas horror film to me ever. I absolutely adore that film. It's equal parts creepy and funny. If you haven't seen Day of the Beast, check it out, my friends. There is a 4K available, so
I own it.
Yeah, me too. I had to. I mean, it's De La Iglesia. I love that guy. Witchin' and Bitchin'. I mean, almost every movie that guy's done, I have a good time with. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep. All right, and for me, yeah, Venom's already mentioned everything that I'm a part of that's new, so nothing to add at this time.
Next episode is my picks.
Yes, it is. Derek is next up in the rotation, and it sounds like you already have your picks. I don't know if you want to announce them or make them a surprise.
Yeah, motherfucker. I already bought you guys one of the first movies. Both of you got a copy of that shit. We're talking about Pinocchio 563 or something. I think
964.
964. There we go. 369. Imagine. But anyways, Pinocchio 964. Some cyberpunk early 90s stuff, and then we're matching that with like Marabito. And you know, the movies have very small casts. That's kind of like the aspect of them that connects them in a way, which we'll talk about when we get into the episode. But like I said, the last time we did Asian shit, I'm going fucking full on Asian. So
hell yeah. I can't wait for every bizarre and absurd piece of cinema we're about to dig into on the next episode.
Yeah, I already watched Pinocchio. Holy shit. It's an experience, my friends.
Hell yeah.
Prepare.
All right. Yeah, and that should hopefully in the first half of October, because I mean, even though this episode probably won't be released until October, I'm still considering it like an end of September episode, so we will look to record the next ep within a couple of weeks. But with that said, that's going to do it for No More Room in Hell number 62. Thanks everybody for listening and hanging in there with our non-consistent episode recording lately. Let's say bye to our listeners.
Bye.
Folks, do your history. Go back, watch these older films that maybe are, holes in your horror viewing, because you might find an absolute gem that turns into a favorite. So, yeah, never skip the opportunity to watch a classic horror film.
Hell yeah, especially with those eyebrows, man.
Yeah, and for the love of God, stop judging movies based on the year they came out, because you're missing out on a whole lot of good shit. If
back in my day, we listened to Wu-Tang, man.
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn.